Chapter 13:16. As soon as the demons died, the drop of heart blood also exploded into pieces and was completely devoured by the yin qi. 5:8 Lookbook Web. Haha, let's see what else you can do. What kind of broken furnace formation is this, and you still want to hurt me? Shura's wild laughter sounded out in the sky. The yin qi was all-pervasive and attacked indiscriminately. Therefore, seeing that the human devil clan's heavenly furnace formation had been destroyed and a few experts of the demon clan had been killed, the yin qi quickly gathered again, and not long after, it transformed into Shura. Shura held the Azura blade in his hand and looked at Saint King and the others mockingly. Saint King's face was gloomy as if it was about to rain. He never thought that his ancestor would think of a way to restrain Shura, and Shura would use a similar method to successfully counterattack. He even killed a few of his subordinates. Saint King was both shocked and furious. This way, without the heavenly furnace formation, it would be a fool's dream to defeat Shura quickly. He looked at Shura unwillingly, but there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng, do your own thing, don't worry about anything else. Shura looked at Tang Zheng with a flaunting look and said casually. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they had discussed a plan beforehand, otherwise Shura would have been injured by the heavenly furnace formation again. He turned around and stared at Chiyu as well as the bloody light that was like an iron wall. When Empyrean Fairy and the others saw this, they were all greatly encouraged, their fighting spirit was high, and shouted, "Kill!" The deafening shouts of killing shot straight to the sky. Both sides were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Empyrean Fairy's mountain river map floated in the sky, continuously releasing rays of light. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning took turns to attack, giving the demon clan a bloody lesson. Tian Chanzi was not willing to fall behind, and fought to his heart's content with the demon clan experts. He had not fought such a battle for many years, and that was 1,000 years ago. This kind of battle caused his blood that had been silent for a long time to boil. His face was flushed red, and the more he fought, the braver he became. Li Xiaotian controlled the sun-shooting arrows and heaven-shocking bow, as if he had the help of a god. One golden arrow after another streaked across the sky and shot towards the demon clan. Some of the demons managed to dodge, but some couldn't. They were pierced by the arrows and died immediately. 9 shooting sun arrows had been shot out, and she had no more arrows in her hand. Seeing this, the devil sect grinned and surrounded her, thinking that she was already a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Li Xiaotian looked at them without the slightest bit of fear. A pitiful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he looked behind them. The 9 shooting sun arrows were so fast that they disappeared after hitting the enemy. Li Xiaotian thought, 9 arrows in one. In the distance where no one could see, the 9 shooting sun arrows, which were originally floating in the air, flew towards each other. Finally, they merged into one and shone brightly. Whoosh! The shooting sun arrows whizzed back. The demons surrounded Li Xiaotian complacently, completely unaware that the Grim Reaper had quietly arrived. Look behind you. Li Xiaotian pointed behind everyone and reminded them. Haha, are you trying to trick a 3-year-old child? How could we fall for such a trick? The demons madly laughed in disdain. Li Xiaotian shook his head. AI, if you don't listen to my advice, you deserve to die. Back then, when she had just lost her memories, Li Xiaotian's heart was pure and she couldn't bear to hurt others. But after experiencing so much, her nature seemed to have gradually sprouted. The cunning Li Xiaotian of the past seemed to have returned. This time she no longer targeted Tang Zheng, but used all of this to deal with Tang Zheng's enemies. The demons laughed arrogantly, but their arrogance didn't last for long. An arrow pierced through their chests. They died with their heads hanging down, their eyes gradually losing their vitality as they stared at the bloody holes in their chests. They didn't understand how they had died. Yi Dingdang, Fang Shishir, and Lu Qingmei were each other's horns. The 3 of them worked together and tacitly resisted the attacks from all directions. The few of them were still too weak, and their battle experience couldn't be compared to the demons, so they were often stretched thin. But they did not retreat. Their faces were firm, without the slightest hesitation or fear. Tang Dehai changed his mind and did not show any mercy. His cultivation was not high, but fortunately he had Marshall and the other Witch clan disciples protecting him, so he did not have to worry about his life. He even took the opportunity to kill a demon. This was the first time in his life that his mind was shaken, and he almost fell from the sky. Only after a long while did he regain his senses. If there was a first time, there would be a second time. After breaking through the initial psychological barrier, the old man's fighting strength had obviously risen by a level. His cultivation had actually broken through in such a dangerous situation, reaching the 9th grade of Anidia, almost touching the threshold of the Jindan stage. He was beaming with joy. He never thought that there would be such a pleasant surprise. This was the harvest brought about by the change in his state of mind. Not only did cultivators train their bodies, but the most important thing was to train their hearts. The state of mind was the foundation of everything, and if the state of mind was unstable, it would give birth to inner demons. With a strong state of mind, one's cultivation would naturally advance by leaps and bounds, and one would be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort. Yen Padian led the elites of the Yen family to truly witness a great battle between cultivators, and even personally participated in it. Only then did he realize how laughable he was in the past. Using the word, "sit and watch the sky," to describe him was already being polite. In the eyes of these cultivators, the so-called clans were like clay chickens and pottery dogs. They couldn't even withstand a single blow and could be crushed with a light flick of a finger. It was no wonder that Tian Chanzi dared to cause a ruckus at his birthday banquet. Other than his confidence, there was also the majestic aura that came from the bones of cultivators. Although there were casualties among his own people, after experiencing this tempering, those who survived would undergo a great transformation. This was extremely important to the Yen family. After this battle, as long as they were not completely annihilated, the Yen family would be able to climb to an even higher peak. Moreover, he had his own mysterious daughter, Yen Qingyi, so he was even more confident. Yen Padian took the lead, waved the sword in his hand, and shouted with an imposing manner, "Kill!" Many martial warriors charged towards the demon clan without any regard for their lives. Hearing the deafening shouts, Tang Jing forced himself to calm down. At this time, being agitated could only be a bad thing. He had to force himself to calm down and think of a way to break through the blood barrier. He had already tried a few times, but the blood barrier only shook a few times, but it did not move at all, as if mocking him for overestimating himself. The blood line in the sky extended into the distance and could no longer be seen. It was unknown if it had reached the other 4 peaks. The witch clan's life force was rapidly depleting, and their faces were pale. It was obvious that they would not be able to hold on for long. Chiyu still did not send him off. He maintained that posture like a statue, but the words he muttered showed that he was still a living being. "Chiyu, I definitely can't let you succeed." Tang Jing looked at Chiyu unwillingly, then looked up at the sky, his pupils also turning blood red from the reflection of the bloodline. "Bloodline, bloodline." He also muttered to himself. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind and he slapped his thigh. "Chiyu, this bloodline is definitely extraordinary, but even so, I still want to give it a try." He soared into the air and directly arrived at the highest point in the sky. At the place where the blood light gathered and the bloodline originated from, a terrifying aura attacked his soul. Just now, when he was on the ground, he did not feel it too strongly. Now that he was close to it, he truly felt the terror within. Could it be that this terrifying aura is the savage aura? The blood of the witch clan contained a savage aura. Chi was trying to stimulate the savage aura within it, and then, using the demon clan's secret technique to activate the power of the 5 mountains, allowing the savage lands to reappear in the world, turning this world into a savage lands. It must be. I have never felt such an aura before. Other than the savage aura, I really can't think of anything else. He was firm in his thoughts. His deduction was correct. This was indeed the savage aura, passed down from generation to generation in the witch clan's bloodline. Chiyu had captured the witch clan for this savage aura, and then used the witch clan's blood as a guide to completely release the savage aura within. So what if it's the savage aura? I'm the witch clan's messenger, so I should be able to overcome this savage aura. Tang Jing encouraged himself. In fact, he already knew that the so-called Lord Messenger was probably just a joke. The witch clan was imprisoned by Chiyu, so the explanation to the witch clan was naturally from Chiyu's mouth. Chiyu understood that after thousands of years, he would not be the original Chiyu's body, but a brand new him. The witch clan might not listen to the orders of a brand new him, but he had the 9 Sun Saint body and could awaken the sleeping witch clan's Saint Beast, so the witch clan would naturally listen to his orders. Therefore, he deliberately left behind the news that the Lord Messenger would deal with the witch clan, allowing the witch clan to pass it down from generation to generation. This was originally a preparation for himself. However, the heavens were playing tricks on him. Tang Zheng was the first to arrive, and he also had the 9 Sun Saint body, so he accidentally became the witch clan's messenger, causing the entire witch clan to submit to him. If Chiyu had known about this earlier, he probably would not have left behind the Bulsh *T prophecy of the witch clan's messenger. That way there would not be so many problems. The witch clan would also obediently listen to his orders and take the initiative to contribute their own savage aura. Tang Zheng was extremely intelligent, and had already figured out the reason behind this. The witch clan was not stupid. For example, the elder must have understood this, but he did not lead his clan members away from Tang Zheng. This was because the witch clan elder had his own judgment. His heart had long since submitted to the messenger, Tang Zheng, so why would he care about Qiyu? Tang Zheng guarded his mind and activated the heaven-devouring technique. Right now he only had the heaven-devouring technique to use. Furthermore, the power of the heaven-devouring technique was more and more beyond his expectations. Of course, he would not give up on such a powerful divine ability. Whoosh whoosh. The black hole appeared, but the savage aura did not weaken in the slightest. Instead, it became stronger and stronger. When the blood in the witch clan's body runs out, the savage aura will become even stronger. At that time, everything will end. I have to stop all of this before that happens. He stretched out his hands and the two black holes merged together, increasing in number. His hands began to tremble. The black hole approached the blood light bit by bit, and his body trembled more and more violently. In the end, it was as if he was sifting chaff. However, he still gritted his teeth and did not retreat. Instead, he used all of his power and relied on the willpower of a citizen to approach step by step. Today's 2 chapters have been updated. Chapter 13-17. Tang Zheng relied on his strong willpower to resist the barbaric aura and approached the bloody light step by step. The others also saw this scene and their hearts could not help but beat faster. Saint King revealed a mocking smile and said word by word, "You overestimate yourself." The demons did not protect the bloody light in the sky at all. There was a reason for that. They were not afraid that someone would attack the bloody light. The barbaric aura made people not dare to approach it. The barbaric aura was so strong that even Saint King was afraid. Red Lunar Beast, Thunder Cloud Beast, and Gui Chensui opened their eyes wide and stared at this scene. The 2 red lunar beasts, one big and one small, cooperated with each other. The barbs on their tails were like sharp swords, leaving fatal wounds on the demons. Thunder Cloud Beast was injured by Qiyu last time and almost lost its life. Seeing the demons this time, its anger was not small. With a flap of its wings, it was incomparably huge. It seemed as if it could blot out the sky and cover the sun. Immediately it covered the few devils. The demons tried to break through the encirclement, but lightning struck them. With a few cracking sounds, the demons were hit by the lightning. Their bodies trembled and finally, green smoke rose and they fell to the ground and died. Thunder Cloud Beast's lightning attack was very powerful and caught people off guard. It really made the demons suffer and also greatly reduced the pressure on their comrades. Gui Chensui was not willing to fall behind. He spat out a water column from his mouth and hit a demon. Clang. A cold light hit Gui Chensui's turtle shell, splashing out a string of fierce sparks. The turtle shell did not move and was not damaged at all. This was Gui Chensui's strength. Its magic attack was not as strong as Red Lunar Beast and Thunder Cloud Beast, but its defense was unmatched by the other 2. This was the innate advantage of the turtle clan. It relied on the turtle shell that was as strong as a fortress. If it hit the demons directly, it would at least cause serious injuries. Xiao Bai had not woken up since the last time he hibernated. Otherwise he would be able to display great power. The 4 symbols venerables followed their previous fighting style. They were bold, sometimes separated, sometimes united, and really gave the demons a huge killing chance. Quite a few demons were thrown off their feet by the 4 symbols venerables. Some people who knew about the 4 symbols venerables' back door tried to attack it and take control of it. Unfortunately, right when they thought they'd succeeded, the 4 symbols venerables suddenly swung their arms and smashed all of them into pieces. From then on, no one dared to have designs on the 4 symbols venerables. When the sage saw this scene, it was hard for him to conceal his astonishment. He had already activated the back door of the 4 symbols venerable last time. He only needed one more step to completely control it. He never expected that Tang Zheng would use some unknown method to actually restore the consciousness of the 4 symbols venerable. Most importantly, his strength had risen to a whole new level. He screamed in his heart, impossible. However, this matter was not fake at all. I clearly opened the back door of the 4 symbols venerable, so how could it listen to Tang Zheng's orders again, and its strength even increased by another level? Of course, Saint King couldn't figure it out. Even if he had thousands of questions, he could only swallow them down. Tang Zheng was completely focused. He didn't care about the other people's worries or contempt. He only had eyes for the bloody light and the bloody lines. Thump. He took a step in the air with great difficulty. It was as if a 1,000-pound boulder was tied to his leg, but he was walking in the air as if he was walking on flat ground. Thump, thump, thump. He gritted his teeth and took a few more steps with great difficulty. He was even closer now. Saint King kept an eye on Tang Zheng while dealing with the Azuras. When he realized that Tang Zheng was getting closer and closer, he finally couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. How could this be? Was the aura of the wilderness useless against him? No. The demon race inherited from the Ninely tribe. After generations of evolution, they couldn't immediately adapt to the aura of the wilderness. How could he not be afraid? If the wilderness reappeared in the world, the demon race could survive, but they would need a certain amount of time to adapt. They couldn't be like Tang Zheng, who was completely unafraid of the aura of the wilderness. No, it's not that he's not afraid of the aura of the wilderness. He's resisting it head-on. Saint King's eyes lit up. He finally understood. He couldn't help but ridicule. He wants to fight against the aura of the wilderness with his little strength. He's daydreaming. Tang Zheng was indeed activating his power and resisting with great difficulty. This was a difficult path to take. Every step seemed to exhaust all his energy. He stretched out his trembling hands. The two black holes had become big enough and were aimed at the bloody light and the bloody lines. Whoosh! The air was sucked into the black holes first. The aura of the wilderness, the bloody light, and the bloody lines didn't move at all, as if they could resist the suction of the black holes. Tang Zheng's mind was greatly shaken. He had never seen anything that could remain unmoved under the terrifying suction of the black holes. This was too unbelievable. Suddenly, he gradually understood where the demon race's confidence in not protecting this place came from. This was indeed not easy to shake. However, if the sky-swallowing technique couldn't disintegrate all this, wouldn't the demon race have really succeeded? No. He gritted his teeth and these two words burst out from the bottom of his heart. Thump. He took another step forward. The black holes directly blocked the bloody light. Buzz. Buzz. The bloody light finally trembled. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up like a person who was about to die of thirst seeing water. The light of hope immediately shrouded his heart. Sky-swallowing technique absorb. Whoosh. All the air in this area was sucked in, and the bloody light's trembling gradually intensified. The light seemed to have dimmed a little. It really works. He suppressed a smile at the corner of his mouth. This scene deeply shocked the others. The people on Tang Zheng's side were greatly encouraged. They all cheered and were in high fighting spirit. The demon race people looked as if they had seen a ghost. It was as if their worldview had collapsed. They kept muttering, "Impossible. How is this possible?" Saint King could no longer remain calm. He abandoned the Azura and flew straight into the sky in an attempt to stop Tang Zheng. Thump. The wilderness aura directly blocked his path. He had no choice but to stop, and his breathing involuntarily quickened. He stared at Tang Zheng, who was not far away, like a knife. This short distance was like a chasm that he couldn't cross at all. This was the so-called, so close yet worlds apart. I can't accept this. I'm a demon and he's just an ordinary person. Moreover, my cultivation is higher than his. Why can he get close but I can't? Saint King was unwilling to accept this and roared. Thump. He finally took a step forward and was one step closer to Tang Zheng. His eyes lit up as he lifted his heavy foot and took another step forward. Thump. Before his foot even touched the ground, he was knocked back 2 steps by a terrifying force. He was even further away from Tang Zheng. Saint King was flustered and exasperated. He shouted, "Why?" He didn't know that every step Tang Zheng took, the suction of the black hole would cancel out a part of the wilderness aura. This way he could get closer step by step. Saint King didn't have the sky-swallowing technique, so naturally he couldn't do all this. Saint King was a smart person. He immediately locked onto the black hole in front of Tang Zheng and said hatefully, "It must be because of this black hole. Damn it, how can the sky-swallowing technique be so powerful in his hands?" Saint King didn't care about the sky-swallowing technique in the past. In fact, he had almost forgotten these 3 words. How could he have thought that the sky-swallowing technique could be so powerful? He didn't have time to sigh. He tried to rush up again. After taking 2 steps forward with difficulty, he couldn't move forward anymore. Buzz. The blood light trembled more and more violently. Even the bloodlines in the sky became unstable and became erratic. Tang Zheng. An angry roar came from below. Everyone looked over in unison. They saw that Chiyu's eyes were bursting with a terrifying light. He locked onto Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. That roar came from his mouth. Chiyu finally spoke. Why did he speak at this critical moment? Everyone's heart trembled. They immediately understood that this was because Tang Jing had posed a threat to his actions. That was why he couldn't help but speak. Tang Jing also understood this and was greatly encouraged. Tang Jing, do you really think that you can destroy my 10,000-year plan with the sky-swallowing technique? Qiyu asked coldly with a murderous aura. Tang Jing took a deep breath and spoke with difficulty. Can't I? Then why are you so panicked? I'm panicked? Qiyu disdainfully denied. You think too highly of yourself. The reappearance of the wilderness is imperative. No one can stop this. Tang Jing snorted and simply didn't answer. He focused on activating the sky-swallowing technique to resist the blood light. The wilderness aura was getting stronger and stronger. Although the sky-swallowing technique neutralized a portion of it, a large portion of it was still constantly eroding Tang Jing's body. Ordinary people, even cultivators, once eroded by the wilderness aura, would suddenly die over time. The wilderness aura would damage their meridians, making them unable to circulate their true qi freely. In the end, the wilderness aura would completely destroy their entire system. In this way, even immortals would find it difficult to save them. Tang Jing didn't know this, but he had already sensed that there was an additional trace of energy in his meridians that was damaging them. He was multitasking. He maintained the sky-swallowing technique while mobilizing his true qi in an attempt to refine the wilderness aura. However, why could the wilderness aura make people tremble in fear? It was because the wilderness aura was not easy to refine. No matter how much true qi he mobilized, it was like scratching an itch through a boot. It had no effect at all. His expression changed drastically. He immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. Qiyu saw his change from afar and heaved a sigh of relief. He originally thought that Tang Jing could really destroy his plan with the sky-swallowing technique. Therefore he couldn't help but speak out. He didn't expect that his worries were unnecessary. The wilderness aura was as powerful as he had expected. Even after tens of thousands of years, it was still not as powerful as before. Qiyu was the clearest about the wilderness aura. Back then he had led the Zhuli tribe to war in the north and south. In particular, during the successive battles with the emperor, he had also planned to draw on the wilderness aura and calmly deal a fatal blow to the Yellow Emperor's tribe. However, it was easy to think about it but impossible to do it. Chapter 13:18. The savage aura had existed for a long time. It was said that it had existed since the beginning of the world. No one had ever controlled the savage aura before. Qiyu had overestimated himself and tried to accomplish this feat, but in the end he failed. But Qiyu and the witch race and even the Zhuli race were born in the savage aura. So they were not afraid of the savage aura. Even I am unable to resist the savage aura. I can only take advantage of the situation, but this little brat wants to resist the savage aura. He really overestimates himself. Qiyu said in his heart. Tang Jing clenched his teeth and persevered. However, a voice rang out in his heart. The inner demons earnestly advised, "Young man, don't try to be brave. This is the savage aura. Moreover, it has already entered your body. It will cause fatal damage to you. If you retreat now, you can still refine the savage aura. It won't cause too much damage to you." Seeing Tang Jing remain silent, the inner demons earnestly said, "I'm not trying to attack you." Back then, Qiyu wanted to control the savage aura. Do you know the result? Tang Jing said, "From what you're saying, the result was definitely failure? You are a smart person. You know the result. Do you think you are stronger than Qiyu?" The inner demons disapprovingly said, "Yes, you are both celestials. You have the 9-yang saint body. But back then, Qiyu was already in his peak state. The difference between you and him is too great. Do you think it is possible for him to do what he couldn't do?" Tang Jing was not reconciled and did not admit defeat as he said, "What the world thinks is impossible, it may not be impossible." The inner demons helplessly sighed, "Fine, then I didn't say anything. However, the one who will be hurt in the end is yourself. Don't blame me for not warning you." What? Just as the inner demon finished speaking, thousands of savage qi poured into Tang Jing's head from the top of his head as if he was suddenly enlightened. "Chem?" Tang Jing frowned. A piercing pain spread from his meridians to every corner of his body. Damn. He turned pale with fright. Without a doubt, the influence of the savage qi had intensified. If he did not control it, his situation would become very bad. Therefore, he hurriedly circulated his genuine qi in an attempt to resist the barbaric aura. However, true qi couldn't do anything to the savage aura at all. It couldn't even scratch an itch. The pain became more and more intense, tormenting his nerves and every cell. He finally couldn't take it anymore and let out a heart-wrenching scream. Seeing this, Saint King was stunned for a moment and hurriedly stopped rushing toward Tang Zheng. The savage aura made it difficult for him to move forward, and he had long wanted to stop. This time, when he saw Tang Zheng's situation, he finally stopped in surprise. He hurriedly took a few steps back to avoid the savage aura and laughed sinisterly. "Ha, Tang Zheng, this is your end. The savage aura will make you wish you were dead." He was greatly relieved. Now he didn't have to worry about Tang Zheng. The situation was settled, and the success of his ancestors' 10,000-year plan was in sight. Qi was also relieved. He sneered and said, "Tang Zheng, was this your plan? Haha, you overestimated yourself. Where did all those bold words go? Why are there only screams left?" Tang Zheng's screams became louder and louder. This was beyond his control. His face was full of cold sweat and his back was soaked. However, he still maintained a trace of reason and did not retreat in panic. Although his hands were trembling, he did not stop the sky-swallowing technique. The black hole was still firmly attached to the bloody light. The bloody light was trembling more and more violently, and the 4 bloody lines did not extend further. "Ah!" Tang Zheng looked up to the sky and roared. His voice shook the surroundings and affected everyone's nerves. Everyone turned to look at him. When the girls saw his appearance, they felt like their hearts were being twisted. Fang Shishir was the first to shout, "Huang Xiang, go and save him." Huang Xiang had been slaughtering his way through the demons. Although he was only at the first level of the soul formation stage, he was invulnerable and fearless. Many demon experts had died at his hands. Hearing his master's order, Huang Xiang did not hesitate. He was not afraid of the aura of savagery at all. He charged toward Tang Zheng without hesitation. Bang! Before he could get close, he was also knocked back by the aura of savagery. He fell heavily on the mountain peak, sending rocks flying everywhere. It took him a while to get up. Fang Shishir's heart clenched. There was nothing she could do. The others also wanted to help Tang Zheng. However, how could the demons let them succeed? They all moved to stop them. "Senior 4 symbols, come here." With a thought, Tang Zheng directly communicated with the senior 4 symbols. The 4 symbols merged into one and turned into a giant. It punched and kicked the demons back, then leaped into the air and pounced toward Tang Zheng. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion. The 4 symbols stopped in mid-air. This scene was very strange. The 4 symbols was suspended in mid-air. It was the formless aura of savagery that was blocking it. It was obvious that the 4 symbols was using all of its power to try and break through this resistance. The stalemate lasted for a few seconds. Bang! The 4 symbols was sent flying. It was like a giant meteor that landed on the mountain peak. The mountain peak trembled a few times. The 4 symbols staggered back to the edge of the cliff before finally stabilizing its body. Everyone was incredulous. Even the 4 symbols could not do anything. Was there really no way to save Tang Zheng? Many people's faces turned pale. Helplessness appeared in their eyes. Finally, Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air and stopped screaming. This required a great deal of willpower and courage. He also realized that the others' attempts to save him were useless. They did not have the sky-swallowing technique and could not break through the aura of savagery. There was only one way for him to survive. Save himself. Yes, he could only save himself. "Don't come over," he roared, stopping the others from acting rashly. "I'm not dead yet." The others' eyes lit up. The fact that Tang Zheng could still maintain his rationality meant that the situation had not reached the worst-case scenario. They all spoke words of encouragement. Qi Yu disdainfully attacked. "You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. You're just struggling on your deathbed. Do you really think you can resist the aura of savagery? You're too naive." Tang Zheng glanced at Qi Yu and said through gritted teeth, "Qi Yu, it's too early to make a conclusion." "Stubborn as a dead duck," Qi Yu said coldly. Tang Zheng did not say anything else. The aura of savagery had already made him unable to say anything. "I'm coming." Crack. An extremely weak sound rang out. However, this sound entered Tang Zheng and Qi Yu's ears and attracted their attention at the same time. "What's that sound?" Qi Yu's heart skipped a beat. His gaze was like a scanner as it swept over the area he could see. Tang Zheng's eyes also widened. At almost the same time as Qi Yu, he discovered the source of the sound. A crack appeared. The source of the sound was here. A crack appeared on the bloody light and slowly spread in all directions. "How is this possible? How is this possible?" Qi Yu turned pale with fright as he screamed. Tang Zheng's spirit shook and his eyes lit up. This was the scene of coming back from the jaws of death. The sky-swallowing technique could actually destroy this bloody light. This bloody light contained the aura of savagery, but it actually could not resist the sky-swallowing technique. At first, no one believed that the sky-swallowing technique could succeed. No one believed that Tang Zheng could succeed. However, Tang Zheng did not believe this and persisted. He secretly swore that he would resist the aura of savagery in Qiyu this time. The heavens did not disappoint those who persevered. He actually succeeded. In fact, things in the world were generally like this. Every time one persevered, perhaps the sea and sky would open up and the harvest would be success. If one did not persevere, failure would always accompany them and they would fall into the abyss of failure forever. Perseverance was victory. This sentence seemed simple, but in fact, one had to experience it personally to understand the truth contained in it. He did not have time to appreciate the panic of the demons. His eyes focused on the crack. While resisting the aura of savagery in his body, he urged the sky-swallowing technique. At this moment, the two sides unconsciously stopped attacking and looked at Tang Zheng at the same time. There was no doubt that he had become the person who determined the success or failure of the entire battle. The faces of the demons became extremely ugly. On the other hand, people on Tang Zheng's side were jubilant and almost jumped up. The women felt like they were on a roller coaster. They were originally worried to death, but at this moment they wanted to laugh. This was the person they chose. He would not be defeated. He would always stand tall. Even if it was difficult and dangerous, he would move forward bravely. Qi was unwilling. He did not dare to believe this result, but he had to believe it. He gritted his teeth. After a while, he shouted hysterically, "Tang Zheng, I won't let you destroy my 10,000-year plan." He suddenly moved and changed his hand gestures. A mysterious and vast power surged out and spread to every corner of the altar, enveloping the sorcerer tribe members. The shaman's eyes immediately changed. They became desperate. Their remaining vitality was like flowing water, quickly pouring out of their bodies. Bang! Some of them could not hold on and fell. They had reached the end of their lives. Ah! The shamans outside turned pale with fright and screamed. No! They wanted to rush up to save their clansmen, but they were immediately sent flying by the aura of savagery. Although their blood had the aura of savagery, they were not used to it. Therefore, when they rushed over, they were still rejected by the aura. Bang bang bang. One by one the shamans fell. It was like a relay. In an instant, 4 shamans lost their lives. This scene caused continuous screams, and heart-wrenching screams were endless. They could only watch helplessly as their compatriots died, but they could not do anything. This kind of defeat and blow could not be described with words. Qi was extremely carefree. He swept away the haze in his heart and laughed wildly. "Tang Zheng, let's see how you're going to break through now." Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. He could only watch them die. He was filled with regret. However, the battle was far from over. He still had a chance to save the other shamans. Suddenly, his pupils constricted, and he revealed an incredulous expression. He stared straight at the blood light that was close to him. The cracks that had spread out were actually healing bit by bit. Without a doubt, this was definitely because Qiyu had forcefully extracted more blood from the shamans to make up for the damage of the sky-devouring skill. Chapter 13-19. This unforeseen event really scared Tang Zheng, and he roared in a low voice, "No!" Qiyu laughed complacently. "Ha, you think that little trick can spoil my plans? Now you know what it's like to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot." Seeing that their ancestor had turned the situation around, the demons all laughed. Tang Zheng was not reconciled and kept urging the swallowing sky technique. Boom! A loud sound came from the black hole. Tang Zheng was greatly shaken, and he felt that there seemed to be a little change in the black hole. The black hole shrank. Why did it shrink? Tang Zheng was baffled. Seeing this, the demons all laughed wildly, thinking that Tang Zheng was an arrow at the end of its flight, and that even the swallowing sky technique could not support him, and was on the verge of collapse. "Haha, Tang Zheng, obediently surrender and accept your death." Saint King did not let go of any opportunity to ridicule him and could not wait to say. The other demons echoed, "Saint King's words are reasonable, boy. Quickly accept your death obediently, and still dare to fight against us demons. You are simply seeking your own death." Qiyu's face also revealed an unfathomable smile, thinking that victory was in his hands. Seeing that his subordinates had ridiculed Tang Zheng, he seemed to be concluding, "Tang Zheng, you and I are acquainted. I will let you die a quick death." Tang Zheng was silent. His feelings were completely different from the others. The black hole had indeed changed, there was no doubt about this. However, the swallowing sky technique was still at the sea-shifting realm. What changes would the black hole have? He was somewhat expectant but also somewhat confused. What's wrong with him? Qiyu's expression suddenly froze and he stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng did not lose his head out of fear as this was too abnormal. Qiyu understood Tang Zheng and immediately realized that things might have changed. In a flash, the black hole shrank to the size of a fist, and was completely different from before, as if it was about to disappear. Suddenly the black hole stopped shrinking, and a terrifying force spread out from the black hole. The aura between heaven and earth changed greatly. Before, the black hole did not absorb much of the savage aura, and used its own attraction to resist the savage aura. The savage aura seemed to be able to resist the attraction of the black hole. But at this moment, everything changed. Like a stream flowing into the sea, the savage aura surged into the black hole, and the fist-sized black hole seemed to have magical power, causing the savage aura's resistance to collapse. Qiyu stared at the scene in disbelief and screamed, "What the hell? How could this be?" Crack. The cracks on the bloody light widened again, and the 4 bloody lines came to an abrupt halt, stopping their extension. Obviously, this situation was more serious than the last time. Tang Zheng, and Tang Zheng, 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 Tang. Finally, his gaze focused on the remaining shamans again, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes as he hysterically said, "Don't blame me, this is all Tang Zheng's fault. Originally you could have lived a little longer, but now you can all die." The sorcerer tribesmen were not frightened. Instead, they looked like they were ready to sacrifice themselves, which made Qiyu even angrier. These people should have submitted to him, but in the end they were taken advantage of by Tang Zheng. "Go to hell." Qiyu roared and immediately cast a spell. Boom. There was an explosion above his head, and the bloody light shattered. Qiyu was forced to stop. He looked up at the sky in disbelief, and watched as the bloody light shattered and scattered all over the sky. "No." This voice seemed to burst out from the depths of his soul, soaring into the sky and deafening. The bloody lines also stopped extending and broke in the middle, turning into drops of blood. Whoosh whoosh. The drops of blood and the bloody light were sucked into the black hole. All the demons were stunned. A second ago, victory was in their grasp, but in the next second, despair descended. This roller coaster experience was almost enough to make them collapse. They did not dare to believe that this was real, nor did they want to believe it. Quite a few of them shook their heads and closed their eyes. It was as if when they opened their eyes, all of this would disappear. The previous taunts were like slaps to their faces, making them lose face and unable to show their faces. The Empyrean Fairy and the others were stunned at first, but in an instant, their despairing mood was filled with the light of hope, and they all began to cheer. No one would have thought that Tang Zheng would have a chance to turn the tables in this situation. Even Tang Zheng himself did not expect this. His eyes were somewhat sluggish, but in the next second he came back to his senses and hurriedly activated the heaven-devouring technique, eagerly absorbing everything. Rumble. Like a surging river, everything in the sky rushed into the black hole. The power of this small black hole was clearly greater than that of the previous giant black hole. When everyone saw the black hole, they could not help but feel fear and tremble from the depths of their souls. Of course, this was for the demons. The people on Tang Zheng's side wanted nothing more than to hug the black hole and give it a kiss. Qiyu's face kept changing and in the end it turned red. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood like an arrow. In the next moment, his face quickly turned from red to white, and in the end, it became deathly pale and dispirited. Ancestor. Saint King and the others turned pale with fright and screamed. Qiyu raised his hand with difficulty, stopping them from rushing over. Qiyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, slowly raised his head, and looked at Tang Zheng with mixed feelings. He was just a little bit away from success, but in the end he failed at the last minute. This was something he had never expected. The price he paid for this failure was more painful than expected, especially when the bloody light completely shattered and the bloody threads collapsed. His mind was violently shaken, and the true qi in his body began to move uncontrollably in his meridians. At this moment he was unimaginably weak. No one knew about this and he couldn't let anyone know about this. Otherwise, if he gave the enemy an opportunity, it wouldn't be as simple as a little failure, but would be life-threatening. He looked at Tang Zheng hatefully, unable to imagine that he would be in such a sorry state in his hands, and that his life would be in danger. Although he wasn't in good condition, Empyrean Fairy and the others didn't rush up rashly. Qiyu had established an unfathomable image in their hearts, and this image had been solidified. Of course, they wouldn't have thought that Chiyu would be so weak at this moment. This was the consequence of giving up halfway and being interrupted by someone else. Chiyu had paid too much for all this, and his mind had long been connected with the bloody light and the bloody threads. The bloody light and the bloody threads were shattered, and his mind was more or less the same. Saint King and the others stared fiercely at Tang Jing and couldn't wait to eat him alive. Finally, someone couldn't control his anger, and with a roar he rushed up to the sky, activated his magic weapon and rushed toward Tang Jing. The others couldn't stop him in time. Strangely, Saint King was the first to shout, "No!" But it was too late to stop him. This person and his magic weapon attacked not far away from Tang Jing. Boom! There was a shocking explosion, and the bloody light danced in the sky. Tang Jing was unharmed. That person had exploded into pieces, and his magic weapon was instantly shattered. Barbaric aura, don't go near. Saint King finally had time to remind them loudly, to prevent the other demons from being blinded by anger and making unnecessary sacrifices. The space around Tang Jing was completely covered by the barbaric aura, and no one dared to go near him. Otherwise, they would be like that person just now, whose body and magic weapon were shattered by the barbaric aura, and die. Empyrean Fairy and the others were delighted at first. This way no one could go near Tang Jing and hurt him. But then their expressions changed drastically, and they looked at Tang Jing worriedly. Not only could the barbaric aura prevent others from getting close, it could also hurt Tang Jing. He was surrounded by layers of barbaric aura. How could he avoid it? Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Chiyu reluctantly retracted his gaze from Tang Jing, and with a cold gaze, he stared at the witches who were still alive. At the last moment, Tang Jing saved most of the witches and only a few died. Kill them. Chiyu ordered with a murderous aura. Saint King ordered and shouted, "Kill!" and rushed toward the witches with a few demon masters. The witches didn't move, as if they were fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Stop! Empyrean Fairy and the others chased after them, trying to stop them. Whoosh! Seeing that the attacks were about to hit the witches, they suddenly moved. At the critical moment of life and death, they scattered and retreated, avoiding the fatal attack. The witches regained their mobility. With the last of their strength, they avoided the attack. Boom! The four divine beasts descended from the sky, crushing the altar and protecting the witches, glaring at the invading demons. The witches were invigorated and they all shouted, "Guardian!" The four divine beasts were the guardians of the witches, and they had been so since ancient times. No one knew how long they had been there. This time, the four divine beasts once again carried out their duties as guardians. The elder's eyes were almost bleeding and he looked at Chiyu with reddened eyes, saying, "Everyone says that you are the ancestor of the witches, and that you were the one who protected the witches back then, leaving behind the last seed. But your goal was actually the blood of the witches. Your 10,000-year plan was really well planned." As he spoke, a murky tear fell from the corner of his eye. If it was in the past, the elder and the other witches still had a trace of respect and affection for Chiyu. After all, Chiyu was the ancestor of the witches in name. However, after experiencing all of this, everything disappeared without a trace, completely disappearing. Chiyu's expression changed and said, "What right do you have to judge me? Back then, your ancestors followed me everywhere and were loyal to me. I didn't expect that they would have a descendant like you." The elder was not bewitched by his so-called righteousness and said back, "That's because they didn't see through your true colors. For your own goals, you can do anything and sacrifice anyone. No wonder you lost to the Yellow Emperor back then. What's better about the Yellow Emperor than me? He's still the same person as me. If I had known that you would be so rebellious, I would have left you behind back then." Chiyu said regretfully, "Yes, this is the fate of the witches, for us to meet the emissary. No, the emissary is just making things up. From today onwards, Tang Jing is our master, and the witches will worship him as their master for generations to come. He is the only master of our witches." The elder's voice was sonorous and powerful, almost using all of his strength to shout out. In the end, he knelt down towards Tang Jing, who was in the sky, his eyes brimming with tears as he shouted, "Master!" This voice seemed to come from the depths of his soul, shaking one's heart. "Master!" The other witches also had tears in their eyes. The elder had spoken the words from the bottom of their hearts. They all knelt down towards Tang Jing and shouted loudly. Chapter 13:20. When the others saw this scene, they could not help but be affected by the emotions of the witch clan. Immediately the way they looked at Tang Jing changed. As the saying goes, a just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng was a person who had achieved the Tao. Therefore, even the witch clan who had a deep relationship with Qiyu, abandoned Qiyu and went over to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's group immediately felt honored, and a sense of pride arose spontaneously. His judgment was right, he had chosen the right person. Hearing this passionate and heroic declaration, the demon clan was furious. Their anger seemed to be about to break through the sky. However, they had no choice. This was the choice of the witch clan and no one could interfere. The anger in Qiyu's heart could be imagined, but he was currently weak and could not do anything to the witch clan. A strong killing intent had already been aroused in his heart by the witch clan. Since you have chosen to stand against me, then I will prove how wrong your choice is. I will bring you a calamity, Qiyu said with a murderous aura. The elder led his clansmen to stand up and stood proudly. He looked at Qiyu fearlessly and said, "Death is terrifying but it can't scare us. Our loyalty to our master can be witnessed by the sun and the moon, by the heavens and the earth, and will not be reduced by your threatening words." You. Qiyu's chest heaved up and down, he was so angry that he almost bled. He held his breath in his chest and had nowhere to vent it. Seeing that, Saint King immediately berated with a stern voice, "Witch clan, you don't know what's good for you and your death is not to be regretted. Demon clan, listen up, kill this group of witch clan people who have forgotten their ancestors." "Yes, sir." The demon clan had already accumulated a lot of anger and answered one after another. The witch clan did not have stage fright. They all stood up straight. Although they did not have much of their fighting strength, they did not weaken their aura. Qiyu then turned his gaze to Tang Zheng. Compared to the betrayal of the witch clan, Qiyu hated this brat even more. If not for him, none of this would have happened. Therefore he was the main culprit behind all of this. "You keep saying that you're loyal to this brat, but do you know that he doesn't have long to live? Just as well, all of you can be companions on your way to the Yellow Springs," Qiyu shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Zheng let out a heart-wrenching scream. Although the black hole had absorbed most of the savage aura, he was still enveloped in it. Every pore on his body was in close contact with the savage aura. His situation was as bad as it could get. He still didn't give up, resisting the corrosion of the savage aura with great difficulty. Boom. Suddenly, a strange sound came from his body, and a black hole appeared in his body. This black hole was very similar to the black hole in the outside world, but it was a miniature version. The black hole was the size of a thumb, but it was in stark contrast to the Yuanying. The airflow around the black hole spun rapidly, but it was not sucked into the black hole. Instead, it formed a vortex. Boom. Another muffled sound was heard, and the black hole spewed out a burst of energy like a fountain. The energy rushed into the Yuanying in a mighty manner, and it was as if it was enlightened, washing away the pain caused by the savage aura. His expression immediately relaxed and he looked like he was enjoying it very much. What's going on with him? Qiyu had been staring at Tang Zheng and he immediately noticed this. Tang Zheng was also very surprised. Looking at the black hole, his heart stirred and he naturally thought of the black hole of the sky-devouring skill. Could it be that the two black holes were originally one? Was this the sky-devouring skill's divine ability? However, this was not recorded in the sky-devouring skill's technique, so he had no way of knowing. The small black hole was still spewing out energy, and the energy was filled with a familiar aura. The savage aura. He carefully pondered and immediately recognized this specious aura. It was indeed the savage aura. Although it was different from the aura emitted by the shaman's blood in the world, it was the same aura. This could not be faked. Could it be that the two small black holes are connected, which is why the savage aura absorbed from the outside world is spewed out from the body? A puzzled look appeared in his eyes, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. In the end, he directly confirmed this idea. Only in this way could everything be explained clearly. The sky-devouring skill actually has such a divine ability. This greatly exceeded my expectations, he muttered to himself. He paused for a moment before he continued, also, why didn't the savage aura that was spewing out cause any harm to me? On the contrary, it's actually assimilating the savage aura from before. If this step is successful, I won't have to be afraid of the savage aura anymore. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel excited. This way he could turn the danger into safety. His complexion gradually improved and his body stopped trembling. The pain on his face became weaker. In contrast, the light in his eyes became more and more dazzling. Whoosh whoosh. The savage aura in the world gradually calmed down and was completely absorbed by the black hole. When Qiyu saw this scene, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He could not believe what he was seeing. No, so much savage aura entered his body. How could he be safe and sound? Chiyu chattered non-stop and muttered to himself. The other demons also stopped and looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes, then at Chiyu as if they were guessing why Chiyu's judgment had failed time and time again. Tang Zheng was not killed by the savage aura as he had expected. On the contrary, he was alive and well. Tang Zheng's face was flushed red and he was in high spirits. He stood with his head held high and floated in mid-air, looking down at everyone below. His gaze lingered on the witch clan. He had also heard the witch clan's oath just now. His heart was surging with emotions. The witch clan had actually recognized him as their master. This was not as simple as changing a name. Although the witch clan would listen to him in the past, the meaning was completely different now. He could even control the life and death of any witch clan member at will. This was the privilege of a master. Moreover, the witch clan would carry out any of Tang Zheng's orders without any discount. They would not go against him in the slightest. Since he was the master, the witch clan had suffered heavy losses this time and so many people had died. Of course he could not stay out of it. He had to seek justice for them. Therefore, he looked at the crowd sternly and said, "Chiyu, you want to kill me and I don't want you to continue to harm the world. Let's end this today." With that he quickly rushed down. Chiyu had no way of dodging at all. Under the lock of such a powerful aura, he had suffered such heavy injuries that he had no way of dodging at all. However, he was not alone, so he was naturally not afraid. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and shouted, "Saint King, protect me." The sage's heartstrings trembled and he deeply glanced at the Chiyu. He simply hadn't expected that the Chiyu would unexpectedly call for him to protect him. This meant that Chiyu's situation was very worrying. Saint King's heart tightened. He did not dare to delay. In a flash, he came to Chiyu's side and guarded him tightly. Chiyu did not want to show his cowardice, but reality did not allow it. If Tang Zheng rushed over, it would be too late for him to ask Saint King to protect him. For the sake of his life, he did not care about his face. A blush appeared on his weak and pale cheeks. He was ashamed and angry, but there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng did not dare to say that he knew Chiyu very well, but he was the one who knew him the best. Therefore, his eyes lit up and he saw through Chiyu's thoughts at a glance. Immediately, he was overjoyed and cheered, "Chiyu is an arrow at the end of its flight. Everyone attack and kill the demons." With the order, everyone's eyes focused on Chiyu. Seeing his expression suddenly change, they immediately knew that Tang Zheng was right. At this moment, cheers shook the sky and they all attacked Chiyu. "Stop them." Saint King gave the order without hesitation. All the demons also swarmed towards the enemy. Immediately, the two sides were tangled together again. It was just that the demons were very annoyed. The situation changed so quickly that they were a little unable to adapt. Tang Zheng firmly locked onto Chiyu. Although Saint King was in front of him to protect him, he had the aura of a man guarding the pass. However, Tang Zheng still rushed down without hesitation. He was like a meteorite from outer space with terrifying power. Saint King did not dare to be negligent. Although Tang Zheng's cultivation was far below his, he could not resist Tang Zheng's ability to come back from the dead. Therefore Saint King raised the sky-splitting axe. Whoosh! The sky-splitting axe tore through the sky and went towards Tang Zheng. Seeing that the blade was about to land on his head, Tang Zheng dodged to the side, barely dodging the attack. But Saint King was not to be trifled with. His reaction was agile and could be said to be in peak condition. With a thought, the sky-splitting axe changed its attack trajectory. However, Tang Zheng's speed was too fast. He took advantage of this gap and slapped in front of Saint King. This was already a close-range battle. Tang Zheng broke through Saint King's defense, which made Saint King turn pale with fright. His hair stood on end. Saint King was at his wit's end. He could only slap out with his palm. His aura was even greater and the air crackled. Bang! The two palms collided. Saint King was deeply afraid that Tang Zheng would suddenly activate the sky-swallowing technique to deal with him. Therefore he moved away as soon as they touched. However, a burst of energy gushed out from Tang Zheng's palm and hit his palm hard. The two of them retreated at the same time. This burst of energy did not really do anything to Saint King. Saint King curled his lips and mocked, "You want to fight against me with this little ability? Do it in 100 days." Before he could say the word dream, he suddenly paused as if he was choked. He stared at his palm in horror and exclaimed, "What happened to my hand? What did you use to attack me just now?" Chiyu's eyes were like torches. He immediately saw through the clues and cried out in shock, "Savage aura, Tang Zheng, you can actually use the savage aura to attack. How is this possible? How can you control the savage aura? As Chiyu spoke, he shook his head as if he had lost his soul. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Chiyu had always wanted to control the savage aura. Whether it was in the ancient times or now, he had no way to succeed. He naturally thought that this was impossible. Chapter 13:21. Seeing that Chiyu was in a daze and kept talking to himself, the others were shocked. Especially when they heard him say that Tang Zheng could control the savage aura, they were scared out of their wits. Before this, the demons had heard Chiyu introduce the uniqueness and horror of the savage aura. They had also heard Chiyu say that the savage aura could not be controlled. Wasn't what was happening now a slap in the face? It was a slap to Chiyu's face. This was also a slap to the faces of all the demons, causing them to lose face. The demons were all interested and had mixed feelings. They really did not know how to face all this. Saint King, however, felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He shouted and said with a trembling voice, "The savage aura is coming out of his palm, which means that the savage aura rushing into my body is also savage aura. This is bad." Although Saint King was a demon and the ancestors of the demons were immune to the savage aura, it did not mean that the demons would be immune to the savage aura immediately. This was a very long process. If too much of the savage aura entered his body, even if Saint King's cultivation was high, he would not be able to bear the consequences. He hurriedly used his chi to try to dissolve the savage aura, but his chi could not do anything. The savage aura was deeply rooted. What should I do? What should I do? Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he once again struck out with his palm. Saint King's pupils shrank as he stared at the incoming palm. He did not dare to take it head-on. Fearing that he would not be able to avoid it in time, his figure flashed and he dodged to the side. Bang! This palm missed and hit the ground, sending gravel flying. Seeing the panicked Saint King, who only knew how to escape like a stray dog, Tang Zheng laughed mockingly. "Saint King Chiyu, didn't you say that you wanted to kill me? Now I'm right in front of you. Come and kill me." Saint King and Chiyu couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Tang Zheng controlled the wild aura, which was equivalent to having a great killing machine. It was obvious that he was a threat to Saint King. Of course they wanted to kill him, but how could they? Ha ha ha. Deafening laughter immediately erupted from the crowd. Everyone looked at the demons in ridicule. "If you won't kill me, then I'll kill you." Tang Zheng did not hold back at all. He waved his hand and attacked Saint King. Saint King did not dare to face him head-on and hurriedly dodged. After forcing Saint King to retreat, Tang Zheng changed the direction of his attack and aimed his spearhead at Chiyu. He quickly rushed toward Chiyu. "Cunning!" Chiyu and Saint King shouted, but there was nothing they could do. Chiyu was firmly locked on by Tang Zheng's aura and could not escape at all. He could only watch as Tang Zheng attacked. "Stop him!" Saint King saw the situation and did not rush to rescue him. Instead, he hysterically ordered, "Whoosh!" The two demons disregarded their own safety as if they were not afraid of death, and rushed in front of Chiyu, blocking Tang Zheng. Bang! Two palms were sent forward and hit the two in the chest. Their chests caved in at the same time and they spat out blood. The wild aura rushed into their bodies like a mad bull, crashing in their 8 extraordinary meridians. In an instant, their eyes were wide open. Their bodies tilted and they fell to the ground, dead. The two blocked Tang Zheng's attack and protected Chiyu. However, the price was their own lives. Tang Zheng's pupils trembled. He was annoyed and unwilling. Saint King acted according to the situation and resisted the wild aura in his body with difficulty. He flew to Chiyu's side and helped him up. He could not wait to say, "Ancestor, let's go." Chiyu was unwilling to end things like this, but the reality was so. He had to bow his head. He nodded bitterly. Saint King understood and glared at Tang Zheng. He said, "Retreat." Whoosh. The demons were also unwilling. They were full of anger and helplessness. However, Tang Zheng's wild aura was too threatening. They all ran away. "Don't run. Chase." Tang Zheng did not give them a chance. He immediately shouted and chased after them. The demons were not weaker than them. Even if they ran away, they did not run for their lives like a sheet of loose sand. Instead, they brought up the rear and sped up to escape. They did not let Tang Zheng and the others beat them up like dogs in the water. The demons had experienced too many retreats in the sky beyond sky. They were orderly and minimized their losses. Tang Zheng and the others chased with all their might, but they only killed a few demons. At the peak of Mount Tai, the hubbub of voices was now silent. Only the sound of the wind could be heard. There were no more bloodlines and blood light in the sky. The sun drilled out of the clouds and shone on the mountain peak. The smell of blood was still very strong. It made people unable to stay here. The ground was almost dyed red with blood. Corpses fell in the pool of blood one after another. No one cared. No one noticed that there was a drop of blood in the pool of blood. It was very unusual. However, it was submerged in the pool of blood. It was like a drop of water mixed in the sea. It was difficult to notice. This drop of blood was different. It contained an aura. A wild aura. This was a drop of blood that fell from the sky. Although the sky swallowing technique was powerful, it had absorbed almost all the blood light and blood lines. This was the only one that escaped the net. No one noticed at all. Crack. The drop of blood broke. The wild aura immediately spread out and fused with the other blood. However, this wild aura was very weak and difficult to detect. However, as the saying goes, a single spark can start a prairie fire. This wild aura was like a single spark that started a prairie fire. It fused with all the blood on the mountain peak. Moreover, it seeped into the ground and hid this wild aura deeply. Now, even if Tang Zheng and Qiyu came here, it would be difficult for them to discover that the wild aura was hidden in the ground. It could be foreseen that this land that was eroded by the wild aura would undergo earth-shattering changes. By the time others discovered this scene, everything would be too late. What would happen after the land was transformed by the wild aura? The answer was self-evident. A wild aura. This did not mean that using the blood of the witch race to sink into the soil could turn a piece of land into a wild aura. This had to be combined with a corresponding divine ability to achieve this effect. Previously, Qiyu had used this divine ability. However, his ambition was even greater. With the power of the 5 mountains, not only did he turn the peak of Mount Tai into a wild aura, but he also combined the power of the 5 mountains to make a wild aura descend on a large area of Wuxia. This was a very grand plan. As long as it was interrupted, the plan would naturally be ruined. However, the divine ability had already been used, and the blood already possessed this kind of demonic power. Thus, when this fish that had slipped through the net quietly fused into the ground in time, this piece of land would naturally become a desolate land. However, this needed time to brew and it would not have an immediate effect. In the sky, the two sides were chasing each other. The battle between the two sides was still tragic, especially the people who stayed behind to cover the rear. They were almost determined to die. Therefore, although there were only a few people, they still blocked this large army. In fact, Tang Zheng's people had exhausted too much. After experiencing such a life-and-death battle, they were almost exhausted. It was the final victory that motivated them and allowed them to persevere. Tang Zheng watched the demons escape, but there was nothing he could do. He could only stomp his feet hatefully, waved his hand and said, "Forget it, don't chase a cornered enemy. Return to Mount Tai." Under Tang Zheng's order, they all turned around and returned to Mount Tai. After paying a certain price, the demons finally got rid of their pursuers. Immediately, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Qiyu's expression was gloomy and uncertain. It was especially frightening. The other demons were as silent as cicadas in winter, not daring to speak. Saint King was still struggling to resist the wild aura. After all, the demons could adapt to the wild aura. Therefore, after putting in a lot of effort, he finally refined the wild aura and was safe and sound. Saint King looked at his battered and exhausted subordinates. He had led them back from the sky beyond heaven. He had wanted to do something big. But the cruelty of reality was beyond his imagination. First, Qiyu appeared and took away his position as the number 1 demon. From then on, he could only listen to Qiyu's orders, and not everything was decided by himself. To be a leader who had always been giving orders, this kind of change in role made him very helpless. Later, Qiyu's successive plans did not really succeed. Whether it was going to the Tree of Life to seize the dark stone of heaven and earth, or the operation at Mount Buzhou, these were all ruined by Tang Zheng. Their plans did not succeed, which was very disheartening. There were some dissatisfied voices among the demons. However, Saint King's prestige was still there. Therefore, he forcibly suppressed all of this. Saint King sighed in his heart. It was difficult to hide his disappointed expression, and it was even more difficult to hide the regret in his heart. These people were all people who had followed him for countless years. Now, some were dead and some were injured. It made him sigh endlessly. After a while, he retracted his gaze and gathered his courage to ask, "Ancestor, what should we do next?" Qiyu glared at him fiercely. Seeing the expression between his eyebrows clearly, how could he not understand his thoughts? He said, "Are you feeling sorry for your subordinates who have died?" The sage was silent and didn't speak. So it's true. Are you blaming me for causing their deaths?" Qiyu questioned in a bad mood. Your subordinate does not dare. Saint King hurriedly bowed. Since you already think so, what else do you not dare to do? Chiyu's heart was actually suppressing a burst of anger. He had been defeated by Tang Jing time and time again. It was really very sullen. He really did not understand how Tang Jing, who was so weak, could cause so much trouble for him. Could it be that he was destined to be his nemesis? The ancients said that it was difficult for two Skywalkers to exist in the world. Now that he and Tang Jing coexisted, they could be considered two Skywalkers. In the future, there would definitely be one Skywalker who would disappear. Chiyu had always thought that he was the Skywalker who had the last laugh. But after being defeated time and time again, a certain kind of vigilance appeared in his heart. Could it be that he, the Skywalker, was going to be replaced by Tang Jing, the Skywalker? Thinking of this, his body tensed up. Killing intent uncontrollably soared to the sky. The other demons felt the killing intent. They all lowered their heads and looked at him in awe. Haha, the famous Chiyu is actually the general of a defeated army. He lost to a junior. Chapter 13:22. These ear-piercing words caused all the demons' anger to shoot up, especially Chiyu. His eyes were red as he turned his head and stared in the direction of the voice. A black dot flashed and appeared not far away. He crossed his arms and looked like he was waiting to watch a good show. The contempt and disdain in his eyes were obvious. Chiyu's pupils shrank as he said through gritted teeth, "Emosia." Emosia looked up to the sky and laughed maniacally. Chiyu, even in your dreams, you never thought that you would become like this. That there would be such a day, right? Emosia, don't be sarcastic. At least I'm still alive and the master you swore loyalty to is dead. Chiyu retorted. Emosia said calmly, Master's resurrection is imminent. Your words are meaningless. Chiyu's heart trembled as he asked, looks like you've collected enough pure yang energy. However, do you think Tang Jing will sit by and do nothing? You have to know that Tang Jing told me that you used the life totem to absorb pure yang energy. It's just that I have more important things to do, so I didn't pay attention to you. Haha, looks like your so-called more important things are to bring the wildlands back to the world, right? Unfortunately, you failed. Emosia mocked. Chiyu snorted coldly, do you think you can resurrect the Yellow Emperor? I'm not as stupid as you. Tang Jing ruined my plans every time. Aren't you the same? Wasn't the matter of the Golden Crow's soul and the life totem ruined by Tang Jing? Emosia didn't fall into the trap and said calmly, but he didn't completely destroy it and make it impossible to salvage the situation. Right now the plan is going smoothly. Even Tang Jing can't ruin it. Seeing how confident you are, then the Yellow Emperor's resurrection is a done deal? Chiyu asked. Emosia smiled. Everything went without saying. Chiyu cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't know what the other party was planning, so he couldn't do anything about it. When he thought about how the Yellow Emperor would be resurrected and how he would have to face his nemesis again, he found it hard to suppress the anger in his heart. From now on, not only would he have to face Tang Jing, but he would also have to face the Yellow Emperor. This was equivalent to being attacked from both sides. His situation would be very dangerous. An idea came to him and he pretended to be kind and said, Emosia, you and I are from the same era. Although we are enemies, we are still acquaintances. There is something I have to remind you of. Oh, when did you become so kind-hearted? Emosia jokingly said, not believing Chiyu's so-called kindness. This is just a suggestion from an old acquaintance. Emosia raised an eyebrow and said with interest, then I'd like to hear what kind of suggestion it is. Kill Tang Jing. Especially at this time when he has used up a lot of energy. If you kill him, no one will be able to ruin your plans. Chiyu's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke. Emosia was slightly startled and then he laughed loudly, Ha Chiyu, you really haven't changed. Even at this time you still want to instigate me to clear the obstacles for you. Do you think you're the only smart person in the world? Chiyu's motives were seen through, but he didn't panic. He calmly said, don't tell me my words don't make sense? Even if the Yellow Emperor is resurrected, Tang Jing will become his enemy in the future, and he may even become a great threat to him. Emosia shook his head. Although I admit that Tang Jing isn't normal, I have to say that you think too highly of him. You actually put him on the same level as Master. It was clear that even though Emosia believed that Tang Jing was very powerful and difficult to deal with, and that he might be able to threaten him, he didn't believe that Tang Jing could threaten the Yellow Emperor. When he heard Chiyu's suggestion, he couldn't help but feel that it was ridiculous. Chiyu shook his head and sighed, you guys think too highly of yourselves. Even after tens of thousands of years, you guys are still the same. I don't need you to lecture me. You, on the other hand, have repeatedly suffered at the hands of Tang Zheng. This can only mean one thing: you're too weak. Back then you weren't a match for Master, and now you're even less of a match for Master. Since that's the case, there's no need to wait for Master to make a move. I'll get rid of you first. Emosia's killing intent surged as he finished speaking. Qi was suddenly startled. He was actually being looked down upon by the Yellow Emperor's subordinates. This was a great humiliation. It had to be known that back then he could easily crush Emosia. The only one who could contend against him was the Yellow Emperor. This contrast between before and after made Qi Yu's lungs almost explode. Emosia, you dare to clamor in front of me alone? You don't know how to write death. Back then you survived, but now you will definitely die. I will burn your bones and scatter your ashes. You will never be able to rise again. You will never have the chance to revive. Saint King, kill him. Qi Yu ordered. Saint King, who had already dispelled the barbaric aura, found an opportunity to vent the anger in his heart. Whoosh! Saint King raised the sky-splitting axe, and a cold light flickered as he aimed it at Emosia. Emosia was not afraid at all. He sneered and said, Qi Yu, do you really think I'm alone? Qi Yu raised his eyebrows. He had a bad premonition. Sure enough, Emosia raised his hand, and there was a ring on his finger. With a flash of light, a black mass of people appeared behind him. Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu were among the crowd. In the battle of the life totem, the two of them fled in panic and were injured. Now that their injuries had healed, and their cultivation seemed to have improved a lot, they were in high spirits and full of fighting spirit. Storage ring. Qi Yu's heart trembled as he cried out in shock. You actually have such a storage magic treasure. This was the pain in Qi Yu's heart. Although he had been resurrected for a long time and had the War Soul Sword, he still lacked a high-grade storage magic treasure like Sumru Tianxia. Emosia had actually obtained such a magic treasure first, which meant that he could hide his weapons with him. By himself he could come and go without a trace. Whether it was a sneak attack or a battle, it would be more unexpected and the power would increase greatly. Emosia raised his hand, looked at the ring on his finger and said with a smile, That's right, a storage ring. He called it the Mi ring. What's so great about a broken ring? Qi Yu pretended to be disdainful. Emosia shrugged his shoulders and said, It's not that great, but you don't have it. These words were very despicable, completely poking at Qi Yu's pain, igniting his anger. He roared hysterically, Kill them, kill! Saint King took the lead, leading the exhausted demons, stimulating their remaining fighting strength, and in the blink of an eye, they fought with the Emperor's tribe. Shouts of killing immediately resounded through the sky, and blood dyed half the sky red. Tang Zheng and the others returned to the peak of Mount Tai, but did not discover this desperate battle. Otherwise he would have definitely joined in. Looking at the desolate peak of Mount Tai, especially the dead and injured comrades on the ground, everyone fell into silence. This battle was the most desperate one in Tang Zheng's history, and the number of casualties was the most. Only now did he realize that he could not truly protect everyone's life. There was a limit to human strength. Although he was full of confidence, there were still things in this world that he could not do. A stifling atmosphere brewed in everyone's hearts. Many people squatted down with red eyes, holding their dead comrades, wiping the blood from their faces, and tears flowed out of their eyes. Who said that men were not easily moved because they had not yet been deeply hurt? This scene was the best proof of that. Although Tang Zheng did not cry, the emotions in his heart were even more painful than tears. He realized that his one word, his one order, could affect many people, even affect their life and death. As the saying went, the more one had, the greater one's responsibility. He deeply understood this point. The dead included not only shamans but also martial artists, and even a few elites of the Li Palace. Li Xiaotian had temporarily transferred them over. Thus, seeing so many people of different statuses fall together was extremely shocking. What do we do now? Tian Chanzi asked. Tang Zheng's gaze swept over the battlefield bit by bit, as if unwilling to miss a single detail. He wanted to deeply engrave this scene in his mind. No one urged him, only watched him. After this battle, he had already become the core of everyone's attention. Bring back all the sacrificed comrades. We want to properly bury them so that they can rest in peace in the underworld. Tang Zheng's voice was powerful and resonant, his voice deep. Yes. The reply was similarly complex, deafening. Following that, everyone orderly found the bodies of their comrades. Because there were demons among the dead. Many people hugged each other, continuously wrestling and killing each other. In the end, they perished together. Their deaths were extremely tragic. Martial artists were not completely useless. Many martial artists eventually used their lives to exhaust other martial artists to death, or a few martial artists worked together to surround and annihilate other martial artists. The role of martial artists in this battle explained to the world their battle strength and usefulness. Tang Jing had never looked down on martial artists. After all, he had too many martial artists by his side. Furthermore, there was Lord Ji Wuxiang, this heaven-defying martial artist. The heaven's chess that he created was extremely difficult to break even for martial artists. Which martial artist would dare to boast shamelessly that he was stronger than Ji Wuxiang? It was precisely because of this attitude of his that he won the Yan family's loyalty. Even though they knew that there would be casualties and there would be quite a few of them, the Yan family still bravely sent people to support. Tang Jing walked to the side of the Witch clan elder, and the Witch clan gathered around him. The Witch clan members on the altar were heavily injured. Although they managed to survive in the end, they would need to recuperate for a period of time before they could fully recover. But at this moment, the Witch clan reunited, sweeping away the previous haze. They held each other's hands and chattered non-stop, as if they had thousands of words to say. This was the most realistic reaction of people who had experienced a life-and-death situation. Seeing Tang Jing walking over, the Witch clan members stopped talking and stared at him with burning eyes. They bowed deeply and shouted respectfully, "Master!" This sentence came from the bottom of their hearts. Tang Jing did not correct them. The Witch clan had already made their choice to respect him as their master. If he did not accept their respect, it would be a blow to the Witch clan's mood. Tang Jing solemnly nodded his head, and one by one he tightly shook their hands, shaking each other's hands powerfully. In the end, when Tang Jing held the elder's hand, the two of them looked at each other. Tang Jing said earnestly, "Elder, I've let you suffer." The elder shook his head emotionally, "No. Master, our entire clan is grateful to you for saving our lives." After pausing for a moment, the elder said mysteriously, "Also, the grace of rebirth." Chapter 1323. The Grace of Rebirth? Tang Jing was completely confused. The elder was very clear about what Tang Jing was thinking. He smiled mysteriously and explained, "Only now do we understand that there is a savage aura in the blood of the Witch clan. In the past, these savage auras had always been silent. Now, they have been completely activated and have fused with our blood and bodies, completely changing us." Tang Jing was shocked. "There's actually such a thing?" The elder nodded and sighed, "Yes, after we fuse with the savage aura, our future cultivation will be different." Tang Jing vaguely guessed something. "The savage aura will help us quickly increase our cultivation. In the future, if we meet another enemy, the Witch clan will not be like this. We will become the warriors that Master is most proud of." Although the Witch clan was known as a natural warrior, the Witch clan in the 10,000 Mountains did not display this trait. They were mostly protected by Tang Jing. But from today onwards, this situation would completely change. They were about to become true warriors. The key to this door was already in the hands of the Witch clan. As long as they turned the lock, everything would be solved. Tang Jing and the Witch clan became excited at the same time. Tang Jing's excitement was not because he had such a capable assistant, but because he was truly happy for the Witch clan. This was equivalent to the Witch clan finding a gene hidden deep in their bloodline and fate. This was one of the important reasons why the Witch clan became the Witch clan. "Master, you have already controlled the savage aura. Your gains will be even greater." The elder looked at Tang Jing with a burning gaze and said. When the other Witch clan members heard this, they all stared at him. Without a doubt, the Witch clan was also very shocked by the fact that Tang Jing had controlled the savage aura. It was precisely because they had the savage aura in their bodies that they understood the difficulty of this matter better than others. The Witch clan was also unable to control the savage aura, but after the savage aura merged with their bodies, it was of great benefit to them. But they had no way of controlling it. Now, Tang Jing could actually control it. The difference was too great. The elder was also unable to predict what Tang Jing would gain. Tang Jing's heart moved and he was also a little excited. Now that the enemy was so strong, if he could become stronger, then that would be for the best. If the savage aura really had such an effect, then it would definitely solve his desperate situation. "Tang Jing, how did you do it?" The Empyrean fairy couldn't help but ask curiously. Tang Jing didn't hide anything and truthfully explained the use of the sky swallowing technique. Everyone suddenly realized that it was the effect of the sky swallowing technique. Tian Chanzi was filled with emotion. The sky swallowing technique has always been a spell of little value to the demon race. It's not recognized by anyone, and almost no demon race is willing to cultivate it. Who would have thought that it actually has such great power? Tang Jing laughed and said, that's because they haven't grasped the true profundities of the heaven-swallowing technique. Oh, what's so special about it? Tian Chanzi asked. The sky-swallowing technique was of little value because it was only an incomplete version and lacked the core. If this core were to leak out, then the demon race's strength would increase greatly. After all, the sky-swallowing technique wasn't too complicated. Almost anyone could learn it, but the realm one cultivated to was related to one's talent and hard work. Do you want to learn it? Tang Jing asked in return. Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, I don't want to learn it. My Kingsaman has countless secret arts, and they're not inferior to this sky-swallowing technique. Moreover, this is a demon race ability. How can a righteous person like me learn it? Seeing that Tian Chanzi didn't seem to be joking, it was clear that Tian Chanzi's views weren't too different from 1,000 years ago. They were deeply ingrained. The Empyrean fairy also had no intention of learning the sky-swallowing technique. She was the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven and was especially confident in her own abilities. Of course, she wouldn't change her home halfway and cultivate other abilities. The fallen comrades had already been collected and lined up together. It was a ghastly sight. Everyone stood in front of the corpses and bid them farewell. Tang Jing raised his hand and said, I'll have to trouble you all to stay in Sumeru Heavens for a while. When we return, we'll definitely give you a grand burial and lay you to rest. Sumeru Heavens flashed and all the corpses were collected into Sumeru Heavens. Only the corpses of the demon race were left on the ground. The demon sect had fled in a panic and didn't have time to collect their own people. The others stared hatefully at the corpses of the demon race. If it weren't for them, their comrades wouldn't have died. They couldn't wait to turn these demons into ashes. Everyone stand still, don't move. Suddenly, an angry roar came from the foot of the mountain. With a few swoosh sounds, a group of people soared into the sky and flew to the peak of Mount Tai. Swoosh swoosh. Everyone immediately focused on this group of uninvited guests. They were all unfamiliar faces and couldn't recognize who they were. Each and every one of them had a stiff face like a block of wood. Even their eyes were somewhat dull. Who are you people? Tang Jing asked in a deep voice. You've destroyed Mount Tai and caused such a fierce battle. You've already caused an extremely bad influence. Why don't you just surrender? The other side scolded. Although the peak of Mount Tai was far from where ordinary people lived, and after the mountain was sealed, ordinary tourists were completely blocked out of Mount Tai. However, after all, their battle had caused too much of a commotion. There were still many ordinary people who noticed the abnormality of Mount Tai. It could be said that it had caused panic among the ordinary people. Hearing the other party's arrogant and methodical tone, Tang Jing thoughtfully said, Why is it that the more I look at this group of people, the more they look like officials? You guessed right. Your actions have seriously threatened the security of the country. Therefore, surrender and accept the punishment. The other side said firmly, not hiding their identity. Seeing the other side admit it so openly, Tang Jing and the others were stunned. When did the officials become so unyielding? Only Tang Jing felt that it was somewhat laughable. Were they blind? Since they had seen the battle, did they still think that they were a match for Tang Jing and the others? Or were they trying to take advantage of the situation? Taking advantage of the fact that they had lost a lot of energy after the battle to catch them off guard? Tang Jing said in his heart if they really thought that way then they had made a mistake. The others were immersed in the pain of losing their comrades. Seeing this group of aggressive people, they all stared at them with unfriendly eyes. If there was a disagreement, a fight would break out. Tang Jing also didn't want to be entangled with them. Moreover, the officials were divided into several factions and he still didn't know who they were. Thus Tang Jing waved his hand and said, You guys should leave. If there's anything, let the person in charge come and talk. I'm the person in charge. The person said sternly. Tang Jing frowned and stared at him. After examining him, he indeed hadn't seen this person before and asked, Who's your superior? You don't have the right to ask. The other person coldly refused. Tang Jing shivered. The other person's attitude was out of his expectations. He turned his head and glanced at Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian shook her head. Clearly, she didn't have any information on this person. Li Xiaotian was extremely careful. She had always considered the threat of the officials to Tang Jing, so she had mobilized all her forces. She had planned the pillow talk plan and roped him in. Of course, she had also thoroughly investigated the higher-ups and the people around them. If the other person's identity was not ordinary, she would definitely have an impression of him. Li Xiaotian shook her head, indicating that she didn't recognize him. This meant that this person's identity was somewhat strange, or perhaps someone who had recently risen to prominence. Thus, Li Palace's information had been overlooked. Among the officials, the only person who had repeatedly targeted Tang Zheng was the chief. Moreover, after meeting the chief last time, there was no trace of the chief. Li Palace had practically turned the entire capital upside down, but still couldn't find a single trace. Could this group be the chief's people? Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea and asked without warning, "Call the chief X out. What kind of hero are you if you're sneaking around in the back? How dare you call master by his name?" The other person's expression suddenly changed and she sternly reprimanded, "Master?" Tang Zheng was shocked and his eyes widened. When did the chief allow others to call him master? This was too strange. Of course, he didn't know that this was the rule that Hundred Faces Star had changed on a whim after replacing the chief. After Hundred Faces Star became the chief, she returned to the center of power and used thunderous methods to intimidate others. However, this secret had not yet been spread. Even Li Palace's focus was not on this during this period of time, so they didn't know about this. Is really his people. Tang Zheng's gaze was like lightning as he stared at this group of people. He's really persistent. He didn't look for him, but he came looking for me. This time he can forget about escaping. I'll follow the vine to the melon and find him. Tang Zheng had already made up his mind to kill. Although this person had a high position and power, he had targeted him time and time again. The most important thing was that this person was too selfish and was not wholeheartedly devoted to the public. If we don't surrender, then what do you want? And how did the chief order you to deal with us? Tang Zheng asked provocatively. Kill without mercy. The other party said resolutely and with a murderous aura. What? The crowd was so excited that they actually dared to give the order to kill without mercy. That was because they did not put them in their eyes at all. Yen Padian had always held an extremely high position in the secular world, and was also good at weighing the pros and cons of all parties. Actually, he did not want to directly clash with the chief, but after hearing this order, his white eyebrows twitched and he said angrily, "After killing you bunch of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, let's see what he dares to do to us." As he spoke, he looked towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng did not hesitate either. He nodded with a gloomy face, and with a tap of his foot, he took the lead and rushed out. "Then I'll kill you first." Tang Zheng's voice was filled with killing intent, instantly arousing the killing intent in the hearts of the others. One by one they shouted and rushed towards the enemy. The number of enemies was even greater than theirs. It was a black mass. Other than the leader, the others kept their mouths shut, giving off a strong sense of oppression. Seeing the enemy charging over, the leader roared and stomped on the ground with his heel. Kacha. A huge crack appeared on the hard rock. Chapter 13:24. The leader spun at high speed and a spark suddenly shot up. Then he turned into a flaming man. The bright red flames dyed the surroundings a fiery red, and a heat wave assaulted his face. This was a spinning fire top. Before it even reached him, he could clearly feel the threat. Tang Zheng was surprised. This person's ability was even stronger than the heavenly kings of the dragon group, especially that fire king who seemed to have the same ability as this person. The chief has taken over the people and businesses of the dragon group. This person must be the upgraded product of the Fire King. Back then the Fire King was already not his match, let alone now. Although the other party was an upgraded product, Tang Zheng's strength had long since increased by who knows how many levels. As a result, he struck out with his palm. Boom. The savage aura was released. The palm collided with the fire top, causing sparks to fly in all directions. The savage aura was not afraid of flames at all, and quickly drilled into the opponent's chest. His chest caved in, but the other party did not fall, and the flames did not extinguish. Instead, the corner of his mouth revealed a sinister smile. Bang! His fist flew out at high speed, leaving his arm. Like a cannonball, it fiercely struck Tang Zheng's chest. The two of them retreated at the same time. The flames on the fist quickly jumped towards Tang Zheng's body, trying to ignite him. Tang Zheng's chest did not cave in. The chaotic Vajra spell blocked the fierce attack, but the chaotic Vajra spell was unable to block the corrosion of the flames. "You're still too inexperienced to play with fire with me." With a thought, a burst of true fire jumped out from Tang Zheng's body, and the flames immediately wrapped around the other party's flames, completely refining them. After the fist struck Tang Zheng, it quickly flew back. Just as Tang Zheng extinguished the flames, the fist flew back to the leader's arm as good as new. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he stared at the scene. After a while, he shouted as if he had just woken up from a dream, "You are no longer human." The leader also stabilized his body, the flames on his body still burning fiercely. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. The huge pit that had sunk in made him look somewhat miserable, but his movements were not affected by it. It was even more impossible for him to be scared off. Just as Tang Jing had guessed, he was not a life form but a mechanical warrior. His outer appearance was just a layer of silicone, disguising himself as a human. The mechanical warriors have been upgraded to such an extent. This is truly an eye-opener. Tang Jing clicked his tongue in wonder. The power of technology was extremely powerful, and he had a deeper understanding of this. "But you're still too weak," Tang Jing said disdainfully. "The wild aura has entered your body, let's see how long you can last." However, the leader acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He wasn't worried about that nuisance of a barbaric aura at all. Moreover, he was still standing there safe and sound. Tang Jing's pupils shrank. He had a bad premonition. The barbaric aura would cause people to tremble at the sound of it and avoid it like the plague. However, it did not seem to have any effect on these mechanical warriors. At least that was the result for now. Tang Jing turned pale with fright. He had always thought that no one could resist the destructive power of the savage aura, especially this kind of simple-minded, brawny guy. But the final result showed that he was very wrong. He racked his brains and finally figured out the reason. Mechanical warriors are not life forms, they're just machines. The barbaric aura enters the meridians of the human body, which means that it's only effective on life forms. Naturally, you're not affected by it. If the barbaric aura really descends into the human world, other than the witch race and the demon race, wouldn't these mechanical warriors be able to survive as well? They wouldn't even need time to adapt. Tang Jing sighed. Perhaps, Qiyu would never have dreamed that his painstaking plan would not only benefit himself, but also these mechanical warriors. Although you're not afraid of the barbaric aura, you're still overestimating yourself if you want to fight against me. Tang Jing growled and charged at the other party again. Whoosh! A leg came down vertically. This was the heaven splitter that Qiyu had imparted to him when he made a bet with the inner demons. Ever since Qiyu went against him, he had almost never used or cultivated the heaven splitter. This was because Qiyu was too cunning. He was afraid that Qiyu would also leave a back door in the heaven splitter. If he used the heaven splitter to fight in the future, he would be in trouble. This time he didn't have a suitable treasure, and the heaven swallowing technique was unpredictable. Therefore he used the heaven splitter at the last moment. The heaven splitter had helped him defend against enemies before and was very powerful. When he used it again, it was as smooth as flowing water. One leg came down fiercely, and his aura was firmly locked onto the leader. The leader immediately realized the threat of death and shouted, "Vajra!" Boom! The earth shook and the mountains shook. A giant flew up from the bottom of the mountain and landed heavily on the mountain peak, protecting the leader. Bang! The heaven splitter hit Vajra's leg. Kacha, sparks flew from the leg and electrical wires appeared. Vajra didn't move at all, as if this injury was just an itch. This wasn't the most frightening thing. The next scene completely stunned Tang Jing, and he almost couldn't move his eyes away. The wound that was emitting sparks was actually healing automatically, just like a cultivator healing. Vajra was a giant mecha, and it actually had the ability to heal automatically. This was really terrifying. The leader seemed to have seen through Tang Jing's shocked thoughts and smiled proudly. "How is it? Now you know how powerful Vajra is, right?" Tang Jing did not say a word. Vajra's power was indeed beyond his imagination. However, he didn't know that the automatic healing displayed by Vajra was fundamentally different from that of cultivators. This was the power of technology. There were nanomachines in Vajra's body that specialized in healing. They were very faint and invisible to the naked eye. Therefore, Tang Jing didn't see the nanomachines in the wound that was emitting sparks. "Vajra, kill him." The leader waved his hand and ordered with a murderous aura. Bang! Just as he finished speaking, the figure of the Four Symbols warrior also descended from the sky. The Four Symbols warrior was the same size as a normal person. In front of Vajra, it was the difference between an ant and an elephant. "Haha, you dare to go against Vajra with this little ability?" The leader laughed in disdain. Tang Jing's face was fierce as he ordered, "For Symbols warrior, help me dismantle it." The Four Symbols warrior didn't say a word and charged towards Vajra. With every step it took, its body became much taller and bigger. Bang bang bang. Each of its footsteps was like a heavy drum, beating on one's soul. The Four Symbols warrior became bigger and bigger. The bureau chief was dumbfounded. This was his first time seeing the Four Symbols warrior, and he couldn't help but be deeply shocked. When the four symbols warrior arrived in front of Vajra, it also became a huge monster that was almost the same size as the mecha warriors. Vajra wasn't afraid and waved its huge fists to meet the four symbols warrior. Bang bang bang. They went back and forth and their fists hit each other again and again. The four symbols warrior wasn't injured at all, but after Vajra took a few punches, its body had a few more wounds. It didn't have an invulnerable body like the four symbols warrior, but it had nanomachines, so its wounds were healing bit by bit. The two huge monsters made the battlefield a mess, and the corpses of the demons were almost trampled into the ground by them. Bang! The two fought to the edge of the cliff, but they still didn't retreat. After their fists hit each other, they fell from the cliff at the same time. Tang Zheng was shocked and rushed to the edge of the cliff. He realized that the two were falling very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they passed through the clouds halfway up the mountain. Boom! A loud sound came from the bottom of the mountain, and Mount Tai seemed to shake a little. Rocks rolled down and rumbled as they fell again. Tang Zheng was shocked. Why was there only one falling sound? Was it the four symbols warrior or Vajra? Haha, your thing is already smashed into pieces. The leader laughed maniacally. Tang Zheng focused as if wanting to see through the clouds and see what was happening below. Rumble. A deafening sound came from below the clouds. Tang Zheng's eyes widened as he saw a huge monster flying up from below the clouds. Vajra! Tang Zheng exclaimed. Both of Vajra's feet were spurting flames, allowing it to fly freely. Obviously, the loud crash was made by the four symbols warrior. Could it be that the four symbols warrior is injured? The mountain was so high that his firm belief in the four symbols warrior couldn't help but waver. No, it's definitely fine. Back in the world of spirits and souls, it was fine even after falling into such a dangerous river. How could it be fine after falling from a mountain? Moreover, it has broken its seal and is even more powerful than before. The leader didn't know this and taunted without restraint. He and Vajra attacked from the front and back, glaring at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's belief in the four symbols warrior was strengthened again, so he didn't fly down to investigate. He looked at the other party with eyes full of cold murderous intent, saying, "You want to take advantage of the situation and take advantage of the situation. Your wishful thinking is wrong. I'm very angry, so you're all dead. I'm going to tear you apart into pieces. Kill him." The leader didn't intend to listen. Vajra took the lead to attack after giving the order. Whoosh! A huge fist came from behind Tang Zheng, smashing towards his head. Tang Zheng's figure flashed and flew above the leader's head, roaring, "Sky Splitter!" Bang! A huge shadow of a leg descended from the sky and immediately enveloped the leader. His whole body was immediately covered in raging flames, and a flame spurted out from the soles of his feet. It spun rapidly and collided with the shadow of the leg. Boom! There was a loud explosion and sparks flew everywhere. The flames on the leader's body were extinguished and puffs of green smoke rose. He knelt on the ground with Tang Zheng's leg on his shoulder. This leg struck his shoulder quickly, ruthlessly, and accurately. The huge force immediately caused him to kneel on the ground and his knees to shatter. He didn't have nanomachines like Vajra, so this huge wound couldn't be repaired. He could only raise his hands with difficulty and grab Tang Zheng's leg. "Is this all you've got? I haven't used up all my strength yet." After Tang Zheng said this, a surge of power spurted out from his leg, like the straw that broke the camel's back. Clang! Chapter 1325. The leader fell apart into a pile of parts, but it didn't affect the movements of the other mechanical warriors. Their gazes didn't even change. These were mechanical warriors, true killing machines without any emotions. No matter how much they looked like humans, they were still cold and lifeless. Whoosh! King Kong attacked fiercely from behind. Tang Zheng tilted his body slightly in an attempt to dodge the attack. Boom! With a loud boom, the mountain shook and the earth quaked. The four symbols venerable quietly appeared on the mountain peak. With a single kick, he swept the Vajra. King Kong fell to the ground, causing the earth to tremble again. The battle between the two behemoths affected the others, and they were too late to avoid it. The four symbols venerable pounced on King Kong as soon as he fell. Tang Zheng was delighted and couldn't hide his joy. He shouted excitedly, "For symbols venerable, finish him off." The four symbols venerable had a tacit understanding and attacked even more fiercely. King Kong stood up and flames rose from the soles of his feet and flew into the air. The four symbols venerable wasn't worried at all. He stomped heavily on the ground and shot into the sky like a cannonball. His huge fist hit King Kong's soles directly. Crack! King Kong's feet immediately shattered into pieces with sparks flying everywhere. The nanomachines quickly repaired it. Seeing this, Tang Zheng immediately reminded loudly, "For symbols venerable, take advantage of this opportunity to defeat him completely." The four symbols venerable didn't say a word, but he deeply understood Tang Zheng's intention. His punches and kicks weren't fast, but King Kong couldn't evade them at all. It was as if only these two were left in this battle. The others paled in comparison. After all, such an earth-shattering battle was rare. In the distance stood a person, Junko. Junko was very secretive and it was difficult for others to discover her presence. She was under the orders of Multiform to pay close attention to the situation. Of course, the focus was on the battle between Tang Zheng and the demons. Multiform was very interested in this dispute. Qiyu actually wanted to bring the wildlands back to the world. His ambition wasn't small. Multiform was someone from ancient times and was no stranger to the wildlands. He knew how powerful they were. Of course, he didn't want the wildlands to reappear in the world. After all, his desire for power had already sprouted, and he wouldn't allow anything to happen from his hands. The reappearance of the wildlands meant that Qiyu would rule the world, and there would be no place for him to play. Therefore he had the same request as Tang Zheng. Both of them did not want the wildlands to reappear in the world. However, in order to preserve his strength, he did not want to act rashly. Therefore he had been ordering Junko to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight so that he could reap the benefits. His wishful thinking was very good and he even succeeded. Qiyu and Tang Zheng were both injured. However, the 100 Change Star Sovereign did not expect that the great Qiyu would be chased and beaten by Tang Zheng. This was too humiliating. As someone from the ancient past, he also blushed with shame and criticized Qiyu. However, he did not hesitate for long and made a decision. In the end, his eyes locked on Tang Zheng. After all, Tang Zheng was a rising star. The impression he gave the 100 Change Star Sovereign was far less than Qiyu. Qiyu made the 100 Change Star Sovereign fearful. Even if Qiyu looked injured, who knew if he was deliberately mystifying? Therefore, the 100 Change Star Sovereign made a decision almost without hesitation. Tang Zheng had ruined his plans time and time again. The 100 Change Star Sovereign naturally wanted to get rid of this stumbling block, especially when this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, the 100 Change Star Sovereign had just succeeded in seizing power. Countless eyes were watching him and he could not leave the capital. Otherwise he would definitely come personally and catch Tang Zheng off guard. He couldn't do it himself, so he sent his most trusted Junko to lead the mechanical warriors and King Kong. He took them from the previous leader. He did not feel sorry for them and directly sent them to fight, hoping to win in one battle. Junko looked at the battle on the peak of Mount Tai from afar. Her eyes were wide open, and her delicate face was full of killing intent. She originally thought that picking up scraps would be an easy task. After all, the battle between Tang Zheng and the demon clan was so fierce, and the consumption and damage were great. She had seen the strength of the mechanical warriors and King Kong, so she was very confident. However, she did not expect that although this team suffered heavy losses, their will to fight was as strong as the sun in the sky. Especially when they saw their comrades who had sacrificed themselves, their hearts were filled with anger. The Nephilim had escaped, and they had nowhere to vent their anger. The appearance of the mechanical warriors and King Kong gave them a chance to vent. Of course, they would not miss this good opportunity. Therefore, the battle was particularly fierce. These lifeless mechanical warriors did not gain any advantage. The mechanical warriors were not to be trifled with. They also killed their opponents. Fresh blood stimulated their nerves again. Suddenly the battle became more intense. Junko saw this scene and understood that the 100 Change Star Sovereign's plan had failed. Tang Zheng was not so easy to deal with. He recorded this battle from afar and sent it back to the capital. The 100 Change Star Sovereign was watching closely. When he saw the situation of the battle, he was flustered and exasperated and flew into a rage. He already knew that his wishful thinking was wrong. Tang Zheng was not a soft persimmon. He could not need him. His eyes flashed and he said to himself hatefully, "Tang Zheng, you changed so quickly. I really underestimated you. If I can't kill you this time, you will definitely become a big problem for me in the future. The Li Palace is your left arm and right arm. I recently found that there are many people in the center of power in the Li Palace. I will get rid of them now so that the Li Palace can no longer infiltrate my territory." As the 100 Change Star Sovereign spoke, an unfathomable smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian did not expect that the spies they had buried so deeply were still discovered by the 100 Change Star Sovereign and wanted to kill them. The 100 Change Star Sovereign was indeed different. He was very different from the other people in the hierarchy of power. He was swift and decisive and did things his own way. It was precisely this kind of personality that attracted a group of people. These people were a group of people at the top of the hierarchy of power. Because of them, the 100 Change Star Sovereign was able to control the top of the hierarchy so quickly. The purge operation begins. The 100 Change Star Sovereign secretly gritted his teeth and immediately made a call. A series of operations began quietly. The people involved had no idea that a disaster was about to befall them. Junko, come back. Although the 100 Change Star Sovereign was unwilling, he had no choice but to give the order. Junko gritted her teeth and stared deeply at the battlefield. She resolutely turned around and disappeared without looking back. As for the mechanical warriors and King Kong at the top of Mount Tai, she did not look at them again. Those were products that could be mass-produced. What did it matter if they were dead or alive? Anyway, they could be produced again. If she could kill more of Tang Zheng's forces, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Tang Zheng did not know that Junko had secretly escaped. His attention was focused on the battle between King Kong and the Four Symbols Venerable. The Four Symbols Venerable fully unleashed his combat strength. King Kong's defeat was gradually becoming apparent. With only one leg left, it was difficult for him to survive alone. Although he had nanomachines to repair his wounds, the Four Symbols Venerable's attacks were too fierce. The nanomachines could not be repaired in time and were heavily injured by the Four Symbols Venerable again and again. Under such circumstances, there was not much suspense in the battle. The Four Symbols Venerable once again delivered a fatal blow. Using both his hands and feet, a terrifying force struck King Kong. With a boom, half of King Kong's body was shattered from his shoulder to his waist. King Kong staggered and quickly retreated. He only had one leg and one arm left. Without needing Tang Zheng's order, the Four Symbols Venerable immediately followed up with a kick to King Kong's head. Crack! Sparks flew in all directions as King Kong's head flew off. With a whoosh, it flew down the cliff. The headless half of its body swayed. Finally, with a boom, it fell to the ground. After trembling a few times, the nanomachines that could not be seen with the naked eye completely ceased their activities. Without a head, King Kong was as good as dead. The nanomachines were of the same origin as King Kong. Now that King Kong was dead, the nanomachines naturally lost their power and were completely paralyzed. Tang Zheng was not surprised by this outcome. The Four Symbols Venerable came from ancient times after all. They were the guardians of the witch tribe. Even Chi Yu wanted to take them for himself. This showed just how extraordinary they were. King Kong was a product of a short period of time. It looked very frightening, but it was a paper tiger. When faced with a real tiger, the paper tiger would naturally be defeated. The others' battles were also nearing the end. Although the mechanical warriors were powerful, they were still wiped out in the end. Tang Zheng's people also paid a price, but it was far less tragic than the battle with the demons. After the last mechanical warrior fell, the crowd let out a deafening cheer. The suppressed killing intent was released and relieved to a certain extent. After everyone finished cleaning up the battlefield, they gathered together. They looked at each other and fell into silence again. This sudden attack caused everyone to be somewhat puzzled, especially when they knew that all of this came from the chief. Yen Padian changed his previous attitude and took the lead to break the silence, saying, "Chief is so vicious and merciless, he has already completely stood on the opposite side of us, so we absolutely cannot be lenient." After all, Yen Padian was not as unafraid of authority as cultivators. He was a person who had been in the secular world for his entire life, and some of his views were deeply rooted, such as his relationship with the authorities. Unless he had no other choice, he definitely did not want to shed all pretense of cordiality. But this time he actually took the initiative to say these words. That meant that he had changed his mentality and mind, or perhaps he had also become as lawless as Tang Zheng and the others. Empyrean Fairy snorted disdainfully and said, "Qin Shi Huang is nothing, let alone this person." As always, she showed contempt for power and disdain for the chief. Tang Zheng's face was gloomy as he looked at the messy battlefield. His tone became deep as he said, "Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you have to find him for me." Everyone's minds shook as they understood that Tang Zheng had completely set his mind on killing. This meant that he had completely broken off from the power and their relationship would deteriorate. Li Xiaotian did not object, but he had already made up his mind. After returning, he would definitely use all of Li Palace's power to minimize the impact of all of this as much as possible. It was not to the extent where Tang Zheng would truly be at odds with the power level, where he would strive for the support of more people, and only burn the flames of war towards the chief. Let's go home. Tang Jing did not say much, he waved his hand and returned to the capital. He did not know that a fierce battle was unfolding between the demon clan and the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, just like the continuation of the Battle of Zhuolu tens of thousands of years ago. Chapter 1326. The demon clan was exhausted, countless of their comrades had died, they were fighting against the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor with exhausted bodies. The fighting strength of the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor was almost off the charts, killing the demon clan to the point that they were in a panic, killing Qiyu and Saint King to the point of wanting to die. This was simply a disgrace to the demon clan, a disgrace to Qiyu. Back then, when Qiyu faced the Yellow Emperor, he was not so passive and in such a sorry state. Today, facing the general under the Yellow Emperor, this was actually the result. How could the proud Qiyu endure it? In order to protect Qiyu, Saint King had a large portion of his fighting strength restrained, and was unable to unleash his full strength. Compared to the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, the other demon clans were much stronger. Yi Meiyu's traceless dream displayed its might, causing many demon clans to fall into a dream, and then killed them one by one. Many of these demon clans had higher cultivation than her, but unfortunately the traceless dream was too strange, causing them to be unable to guard against it. Even after that, they thought of ways to guard against it, but they did not succeed completely. After all, they were not like Tang Jing, who had another soul living in his body that could be awakened at the crucial moment. The reason why it was difficult to find a successor for the traceless dream was because this divine ability was too heaven-defying, to the point that the requirements for the successor were extremely harsh. It was simply abnormal. Yi Meiyu's talent was extraordinary, and she actually met this condition, which was why she had her current achievements. Seeing the demon clanist die under her hands, Yi Meiyu's face glowed with pride. However, she knew that if not for her ruthlessness in killing her master at the crucial moment, she would definitely not have her current position in the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. She might just be the disciple of the Nightmare Lord and could not be the head of the family. Therefore, she was very glad that she made the choice back then. Killing the Nightmare Lord was the wisest decision. As for whether this matter would be exposed, she was not worried at all. Tang Jing had already revealed this matter to the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, but no one believed him. Perhaps, even if someone was suspicious, they wouldn't dare to do anything to her without real evidence. After all, her role in the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates was becoming more and more prominent, and her position was also getting higher and higher. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates couldn't bear to lose her, the only person who could use the Traceless Dream spell, after losing Nightmare Lord. No matter what the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor did, they could only endure without any clear evidence. Yi Meiyu was not an idiot, so she thought everything through clearly. She was fearless, so when facing Lu Wuxin she was no longer as cautious as before. Lu Wuxin had suffered a huge loss at the hands of Tang Jing, and the Heartless Willow was also destroyed. Her fighting strength was greatly reduced, so Yi Meiyu was naturally no longer afraid of her. Therefore, among the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, the only person Yi Meiyu feared was Xia. Xia was unfathomable, so she did not dare to act rashly. Yi Meiyu killed a few more devils and looked at Lu Wuxin. As if their hearts were connected, Lu Wuxin also turned his head to look at her. When their eyes met, Yi Meiyu did not hide her pride at all. It was obvious that she was provoking him. When Lu Wuxin saw this, he hated her from the bottom of his heart. He secretly regretted not seeing that Yi Meiyu was such a person. But it was too late now. Ever since Yi Meiyu's comprehension of the Traceless Dream spell had risen to another level, her cultivation had leaped by leaps and bounds, Lu Wuxin had been challenged by Yi Meiyu everywhere. Her reputation as the strongest female general in the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates seemed to be in danger. If she had not recovered her former strength when the Yellow Emperor was revived, and Yi Meiyu became more and more powerful, then Yi Meiyu would very likely soar into the sky and take her place. This would definitely be a great disaster for Lu Wuxin. Although Xia and Lu Wuxin were old acquaintances and comrades, he did not favor Lu Wuxin. In the ancient era, people respected the strong, and Xia was no exception. He was a swordsman, and his pursuit of power was even more persistent. Seeing Yi Meiyu soar into the sky, he could not help but have a whole new level of respect for her. Lu Wuxin's name was Wuxin, but he was not really a heartless person, so he was very clear about Xia's temper, and did not complain to him and ask for help. If she really did that, Xia would look down on her even more, and her position in his heart would be even lower, which would benefit Yi Meiyu for nothing. Emosia's Ganjiang sword thrusted out a few times, heading straight for Qiyu. He had already attacked Qiyu time and time again. In fact, he knew that he could not kill Qiyu, but he did not stop. Because this could completely restrain Saint King's power. Saint King's cultivation was slightly higher than Emosia's. Emosia had gone through a lot of trouble to recover to the first stage of the Mahayana realm, and was not a match for Saint King at all. Therefore he had no choice but to find another way to target Qiyu. The effect was amazing. Saint King was furious, but he could not do anything to Emosia. He could not abandon Qiyu and chase after Emosia, so Emosia used guerrilla warfare to distract him, causing him to almost collapse. Emosia, if you have the ability to fight me head-on, what kind of man are you? Saint King flew into a rage. Emosia was unmoved. No matter how unpleasant Saint King's words were, he would not be angry. You are an ancient person and your cultivation is inferior to mine, yet you use such despicable methods. This is simply a great disgrace. Saint King continued to attack with his words, trying to anger Emosia and make him change his strategy. Unfortunately, Emosia did not eat this at all. As an ancient person who had been famous for a long time, his cultivation was not as good as Saint King's. This was indeed not a glorious thing. But Emosia was not worried at all. This was because his cultivation recovered very quickly. Ever since he was resurrected, his cultivation had improved by 1,000 miles. Especially recently, it was like the speed of a rocket. This was all within his expectations. After some time, his cultivation would recover to its previous peak level. Then it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with a Saint Monarch. It was precisely because he knew that this group of people recovered their cultivation quickly that he was determined to intercept and kill the demons halfway. Qiyu was the same as him or even faster than him. Once he adapted to his new body and new environment, he would soar to the sky. At that time, Emosia would not be Qiyu's opponent at all. The only one who could contend against Qiyu would be the Yellow Emperor. This was equivalent to throwing a hot potato to the Yellow Emperor. As a subordinate, this was where Emosia was not competent. Of course, he did not want to leave the mess to the Yellow Emperor. He wanted to settle everything, and once the Yellow Emperor was resurrected, he would not have to worry about these messy things. Therefore he was determined to win this battle. Not only did he want to annihilate the demons, he also wanted to take advantage of the fact that Qiyu had not recovered to kill him. Seeing that his repeated attacks were unable to truly harm Qiyu, and were unable to completely deal with Saint King, Emosia could not help but be worried. Especially when he saw that Qiyu was like an old monk in meditation, completely ignoring the battle in the outside world, Emosia became even more worried. Qiyu threw away the distracting thoughts of the outside world and focused on healing himself. Once his injuries were healed, Emosia's plan would be ruined. But his cultivation was one level lower than Saint King's, so how could he kill Saint King? Emosia was racking his brains. Suddenly he had an idea. His gaze landed on the valiant and heroic Yi Meiyu as he shouted, "Meiyu, lend me a hand." When Yi Meiyu heard this voice, she flew to Emosia's side as if she had been injected with chicken blood. Emosia nodded at her meaningfully. Yi Meiyu understood and activated the traceless dream technique, causing everything in front of her to change. All of these changes were extremely subtle, without a trace, as if they were real. Saint King did not know it all. He had already prepared a new attack. The heaven-splitting axe fiercely attacked Emosia. They were cultivators and their attacks did not have to be close. Therefore, even if they were far away, their attacks could still be fatal. Saint King was also flustered and exasperated. This attack had been brewing for a long time, and was extremely powerful. The heaven-splitting axe streaked across the sky and enveloped Emosia. Emosia raised his sword and tried to block it. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. Saint King said disdainfully. Just as the heaven-splitting axe was about to hit Emosia, a loud shout exploded in Saint King's ears. Stop. Unknowingly, Qiyu stood up and stared at Saint King with vigor. That loud shout came from Qiyu's mouth. Saint King was overjoyed. Looking at Qiyu's aura, it was obvious that he had completely recovered. He immediately stopped the heaven-splitting axe in midair and cheered, "Ancestor, you have finished healing. Congratulations, your subordinate is useless. I was unable to defeat these despicable Yellow Emperor's old subordinates." Qiyu's expression was unsettled and said disdainfully, "These Yellow Emperor's old subordinates are truly despicable. Now we are going to kill them all." Saint King beamed with joy and nodded his head in agreement. "Ancestor, you are right. In front of you, they are nothing but clay chickens and pottery dogs, unable to withstand a single blow." Saint King was only focused on complimenting Qiyu, and did not notice that the corner of Emosia's mouth curved into an unfathomable cold smile. "Chi Saint King, who do you think you are, daring to challenge me? Now I will kill you and throw away your helmet and armor." Emosia suddenly opened his mouth, spouting nonsense. Saint King and Chi flew into a rage and attacked him at the same time. Saint King could not wait any longer and rushed out first, roaring in exasperation. "You dare to be rude to Ancestor. Ancestor does not need to do anything, I can also kill you." Whoosh. Saint King's heaven-splitting axe immediately arrived above Emosia's head. He looked down from above, and with the heaven-splitting axe in his hand, he really had the aura of splitting heaven and earth. Emosia raised his sword and just like before he tried to block. Chi followed closely behind Saint King and was only a step away. Suddenly, Chi made his move, and a cold light appeared in his hand. The cold light flew straight out, but it did not shoot towards Emosia, and with a poof, it sank into Saint King's back. Ah! Saint King was ambushed and let out a heart-wrenching scream. He turned around abruptly but saw an unexpected face. Chi. It was actually Chi who attacked from behind and gave him a fatal blow. That cold light had already penetrated his body and injured his lungs. Saint King stared at Chi with mixed feelings and asked, "Ancestor, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?" "Because you deserve to die." Chi suddenly sneered and said murderously. Saint King's pupils shrank and he stared straight at Chi and shouted, "No, you are not Ancestor, you are not." Poof. Chapter 1327. The Ganjiang sword pierced through Saint King's chest. Emosia held the sword with both hands and smiled. Saint King's heart was pierced through and shattered by the powerful sword intent. However, Saint King was not dead yet. Instead, he turned his head and looked at Emosia who was right in front of him, then looked at Chi and said in despair, "What is going on?" Chi suddenly opened his mouth and said disdainfully, "Haven't you heard of the Heart's Dream Traceless spell?" Heart's Dream Traceless? Saint King was at a loss. Nightmare had died a long time ago, so his divine ability had not been passed down. Of course, the demons did not know about a divine ability from tens of thousands of years ago. Saint King's attention was focused on Chi when Yimeyu used the Heart's Dream to kill the other opponents, so he did not notice any clues. In the end, he was finally tricked by Yimeyu. "Who the hell are you?" Saint King's mouth was already bleeding as he glared at Chi and asked. "Of course I'm Yimeyu." As if his vision blurred, Chi changed his appearance and became Yimeyu. Saint King's pupils constricted as he shouted hysterically, "You actually deceived my eyes." After Emosia absorbed Saint King's attention, Yimeyu took advantage of the Saint King's unpreparedness and used the Heart's Dream Traceless spell without a trace. Finally, she silently lured the Saint King into the dream. This time it was very different from before. In the past, in the dreams that Yimeyu created, she was the only living being. No matter how many people or things there were, they were all illusions. This time it was completely different. The Emosia in the dream was real. This was the change brought about by Yimeyu's cultivation and attainments. He could let others enter the dream she created and become her assistant to help her defeat her enemies. The two of them worked together perfectly and successfully killed Saint King. Chiyu had been healing with his eyes closed. His eyelids only twitched slightly, but he did not say anything to stop them. Because he had already reached the most critical moment of healing, he simply could not be distracted. There was nothing he could do about the death of Saint King. He felt that it was a great pity. After all, Saint King was a powerful assistant. It was a great loss for him to fall into the hands of the enemy. This thought flashed through Chiyu's mind, but it did not leave too deep of a shadow in his heart. Then he put all his effort into healing his injuries. He knew that without Saint King's protection, Emosia would definitely not let him go. In the face of death, his potential was completely stimulated, and his injuries healed very quickly. The life force in Saint King's eyes was rapidly depleting. He looked at Yimeyu unwillingly, spat out blood and said hesitantly, "I, Saint King, have been unhindered for my entire life and have not died in heavens beyond. I never thought that I would be tricked by a little girl like you. This is a great humiliation. I can't die in peace." Yimeyu said proudly, "This should be your honor to die in my hands. Go to hell." Saint King suddenly had a flash of consciousness before his death, and suddenly exploded, breaking away from the Ganjiang sword. A strange scene appeared. Not a single drop of blood fell to the ground, but all of it was absorbed by the Ganjiang sword. The Ganjiang sword turned blood red. The heaven-splitting axe flew out from Saint King's hands and directly slashed towards Yimeyu. Yimeyu retreated in panic. With her strength, she was still unable to receive this attack. Although she could use her heart to enter the trap and deal with the Saint King. In terms of fighting strength, how could she be a match for the Saint King? Even if the Saint King was heavily injured, this attack that burned his life force could still kill her. She retreated in a hurry, but the attack of the heaven-splitting axe was even faster. It completely enveloped her, causing her to have nowhere to hide. I can't die like this, Yi Meiyu shouted in her heart. Bang! The heaven-splitting axe stopped, blocked by the Ganjiang sword. At the critical moment, Mo Xie saved Yi Meiyu's life. When Lu Wuxin saw this scene, he wanted to stomp his feet. He thought to himself, how could this woman be so lucky for Mo Xie to protect her like this? If this axe had struck, then Yi Meiyu would have died without a doubt, helping him vent his anger. After surviving a calamity, Yi Meiyu patted her chest lightly, her breast surging as she looked at Mo Xie with her beautiful eyes. Mo Xie looked straight ahead, looking at the dying Saint King, and said, "Go, your life has come to an end." With that, he slapped Saint King's chest. Saint King's entire body trembled, his chest quickly caved in, as though a pit had appeared on the ground. With a puff, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Saint King's eyes bulged out, his life force quickly burned out in a few seconds, until it dried up, and he fell limply to the ground. Saint King was dead. The demons cried out in alarm, like a clap of thunder, causing everyone's ears to buzz. The demons stared blankly at Saint King, who had fallen to the ground. That was once their leader, who led them to avoid the pursuit of the natives of the sky beyond heaven, and even said that he would bring them back to do something big and rule the entire world. Who would have thought that before this grand blueprint could be implemented, Saint King would fall? It was like the collapse of the demons' faith. Everyone's faces were pale and uneasy, as though they had lost their goal in life. Kill. Seeing that Mo Xie was secretly happy, how could he let go of this heaven-sent opportunity, and ordered loudly. The shouts of Yellow Emperor's former subordinates shook the heavens, and attacked the demons with an imposing aura. The demons panicked, they did not have the courage or fighting spirit to continue fighting, there was only one thought in their minds: escape. Saint King was already dead, so how could they be a match for the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates? Thus it was more important for them to obediently escape. The corners of Mo Xie's mouth curled up into a smile. This plan could be said to be a great success, killing countless demons, and now the final step was in sight. His gaze fell on Qiyu, who had his eyes closed and was silent. Once he was killed, it would be a complete victory. Mo Xie, Yi Meiyu, and Lu Wuxin formed a triangle, approaching Qiyu step by step. The three of them did not act rashly. The shadow of a tree, the name of a person. Qiyu's name was too frightening, and they did not dare to lower their guard. When the three of them were only a step away from Qiyu, they stopped at the same time, looked at each other, and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. Mo Xie nodded heavily, indicating that everyone should act together. Shua. The attacks came together from the three of them towards Qiyu. Qiyu remained motionless like an old monk in meditation. Seeing this, the three of them revealed a hint of joy. At the last moment, if Qiyu did not resist, then he would definitely die. Boom. With a loud sound, the attacks of the three of them hit the void, but did not land on Qiyu's body. A ray of light bloomed from Qiyu's body, completely blocking the attacks of the three of them. The three of them turned pale with shock. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's hearts. Wasn't Qiyu an arrow at the end of its flight? How could he still have such a strong self-defense ability? The combined attacks of the three of them did not have any effect at all. Mo Xie's mind raced, and he immediately determined the pros and cons. He immediately shouted, "Don't give up, continue to attack, we must kill him." Mo Xie had no way out. If they let Qiyu go this time, they would definitely be annihilated. After all, Saint King had died in their hands. Moreover, the strength displayed by the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor must have left a deep impression on Qiyu. How could Qiyu let go of such a powerful enemy, an old enemy of tens of thousands of years? Either you die or I die. This was the current situation between them. Kill? Mo Xie growled, the Ganjiang sword released a dazzling light. The sword spirit caused the War Soul sword to tremble non-stop, buzzing as if it was cheering. Ganjiang sword, you and I will fight side by side again. We must kill Qiyu. Mo Xie secretly said to himself. Shua. The sword light rose, like a waterfall shooting out from the Ganjiang sword, piercing towards Qiyu. At the same time, Lu Wuxin also shook his magic treasure. It was a long whip, although it was not as powerful as the previous Heartless Willow, he had already adapted to it. Therefore, the long whip was like an extension of Lu Wuxin's arm. As if it was controlled by his arm, it fiercely attacked Qiyu. Yi Meiyu did not have a suitable magic treasure, so she simply slapped at the top of Qiyu's head, trying to gain the upper hand and give Qiyu a fatal blow. The attacks of the three could not be said to be weak, especially Moxia. The sword light of the Ganjiang sword seemed to have locked onto Qiyu. Not to mention that he did not move. Even if Qiyu moved, it would be difficult for him to effectively escape from the Ganjiang sword. Qiyu did not escape. The others had already fled far away. Qiyu was like a lonely person, extremely miserable and pitiful. No one pitied him. Suddenly, Qiyu quickly opened his eyes, as if a light was emitted from his pupils. His aura was completely different, as if he was a completely different person. Was it possible for a person to change so much in such a short period of time? Of course it was possible. Everything in front of him was the best proof. Without a doubt, this was definitely because Qiyu had recovered from his injuries. Whiz! A sword light soared into the sky. Clang! The two swords collided, causing sparks to fly. The War Soul sword and the Ganjiang sword clashed. The powerful sword Qi created two whirlwinds. The whirlwinds collided with each other, stirring up the air as if the wind and clouds were surging. The difference in strength between Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu was too great. Before their attacks could reach Qiyu, they were pushed back by the berserk aura. Their expressions changed drastically at the same time as they muttered to themselves, not knowing what to do. Qiyu's injuries had healed, so should they fight or retreat? Since the two of them could kill the Saint King, then if the three of them worked together, would they be able to kill Qiyu? This thought ignited in the hearts of the two of them. However, Moxia was not so optimistic in his heart. As the person involved, he knew the power of this sword strike the best. It was the power that came back from the Ganjiang sword that shook his soul, causing his arm to tremble and the Ganjiang sword to almost fly out of his hand. Kill. Moxia did not give up. Victory or defeat depended on this move. If he gave up, then Qiyu would definitely chase after him relentlessly in the future, which was definitely not a good thing for them. It would be better to take a gamble. If they could kill Qiyu, that would be the greatest victory. The moment the word kill was spoken, the Ganjiang sword turned blood red, as if it had been tempered in blood for a long time and had drunk its fill of human blood. Whoosh! Chapter 1328. The sky was as red as blood, and the slash of the Ganjiang sword contained boundless power. Qiyu casually raised the War Soul sword. The sword light expanded like the light of the sun and moon, completely covering the bloody light of the Ganjiang sword. The others closed their eyes one after another, shocked by this scene to the point that their minds were shaken. Run! An earth-shattering roar came out from the sword light, panicking. Everyone could tell that it was Moxia's voice. The fact that he shouted the word run so urgently was enough to explain everything. He was not a match for Qiyu and was even far from it. Many people were stunned. They never thought that Moxia would be so weak, losing in just a few moves and even telling everyone to flee. This was too embarrassing. Use your heart's dream traceless technique. Lu Wuxin did not escape but instead urged Yi Meiyu. At the critical moment, Yi Meiyu did not get angry with Lu Wuxin. Instead, she quickly activated the innate qi and used the heart's dream traceless technique. However, he heard Qiyu say disdainfully, "Heart's dream traceless, you want to deal with me with such a small trick? You're asking for humiliation. If Nightmare were here, he might be able to threaten me a little. You're too inexperienced." As soon as he finished speaking, he did not see any movement. Yi Meiyu suddenly bent down and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her spell had failed. In front of Qiyu, her heart's dream traceless technique, which had always been unobstructed, had actually failed. It was even more thorough than when she was facing Tang Zheng. Yi Meiyu's heart was filled with unwillingness, but she did not dare to stay any longer. She turned around and fled as fast as she could. Seeing that, the other former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor all woke up from their stupor and ran for their lives, just like the Demon Clan just now. When the Demon Clan who had already fled for a distance saw this scene, they immediately stopped in their tracks. They heard an excited voice shouting, "The ancestor has shown his might. Brothers, kill them all. Kill these damned fellows." The exhausted Demon Clan regained their vitality and turned around to charge forward with high fighting spirit. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were immediately blocked off. A fierce battle broke out between the two sides with casualties on both sides. But unlike the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, they didn't linger in battle. Instead, they seized the opportunity to break out of the encirclement. Their ability to escape was no less than that of the demon race. Lu Wuxin watched Yi Meiyu's escaping figure from afar. She had already broken through the encirclement of the demon clan and escaped. This made Lu Wuxin feel extremely ashamed. He spat out a mouthful of saliva and said with disdain, "Deserters, you don't even have the courage to fight, and you even abandoned your own comrades." The sword light was still very bright. Lu Wuxin couldn't see Qiyu and Emosia in it. She was very anxious about Emosia. In the end, she didn't listen to Emosia's advice. She shook her wrist and the whip flickered. Boom, boom. The long whip struck the sword light again and again. However, the sword light did not even tremble in the slightest. On the contrary, the long whip fell down in a disorderly manner. It was actually twisted into several pieces by the sword light, and was completely scrapped. Bang. At this moment, the sword light exploded. Countless sword lights were like flying knives and hidden weapons, whooshing and whooshing, hitting many of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Screams rose and fell one after another, but they stopped abruptly. In an instant, the sword light reaped the lives of many of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. But there was nothing they could do. The sword light dissipated, and a figure flew out in a sorry state. It was Emosia. Her hair was disheveled, and she didn't have the calmness of having extra money. Run. Emosia once again hysterically commanded loudly. Then she didn't care about anyone else and like a stray dog fled as fast as she could. Lu Wuxin's long whip had just been destroyed. Seeing this scene at close range, the shock in her heart could be imagined. She finally realized that this wasn't something that they could fight against. She panicked and couldn't help but envy Yimeyu. She had become a deserter in such a timely manner. She must have escaped to a safe place. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot, and her burly body flew backwards. However, a large hand reached out and grabbed Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin's heart trembled as she shouted, "Let go of me." His palm flew out in an attempt to make Qiyu let go. Kacha. Lu Wuxin's palm struck Qiyu's fist, as if it had struck a meteorite from outer space. Lu Wuxin's fist immediately shattered, and even his joints and bones were shattered. Lu Wuxin cursed inwardly and tried to escape again, but Qiyu grabbed onto Lu Wuxin's hand. Bang. Immediately, Lu Wuxin was like a meteor hammer that was ruthlessly smashed onto the ground by Qiyu. His head was bleeding and he was in a sorry state. Lu Wuxin's body and mind were greatly shaken, and his injuries were extremely severe. She struggled to get up as if she wanted to escape from this hellish place. However, Qiyu raised his hand again and from top to bottom, he ruthlessly smashed it on the ground. Bang. Like a ripe watermelon exploding, Lu Wuxin's head was the first to hit the ground. She did not cultivate the chaotic Vajra spell, so her body was not that strong. The strength of this slap could be said to be terrifying. Lu Wuxin's head was also like a watermelon, directly exploding into pieces, and not a single part of it was intact. Lu Wuxin was dead. The female general that the Yellow Emperor valued the most was actually so weak after tens of thousands of years, instantly killed by the enemy. This was indeed an instant kill. Qiyu had only attacked a few times, and Lu Wuxin had died so thoroughly that even his corpse could not be preserved. A firefly dares to compete with the sun and moon, Qiyu said disdainfully. Qiyu stepped over Lu Wuxin's corpse, and his gaze immediately locked onto the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates who were frantically fleeing. Demons, listen to my order. Kill all of the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates, and I will reward you handsomely. Qiyu ordered, and a large number of people responded. The demons were finally able to hold their heads high. Without the Saint King as their backbone, they now had an even more unbreakable backbone, Qiyu. No matter what order Qiyu gave, the demons immediately carried it out without hesitation. For example, the demons formed groups of 3 to 5, like a large net, and immediately stopped the fleeing Yellow Emperor's old subordinates. The roles of each side were completely reversed and it was too dramatic. But the brutality of the battle was unbearable to watch. Emosia did not have time to save all of his people. Taking advantage of the battle between Qiyu and Lu Wuxin, he hurriedly fled into the distance, not caring about Lu Wuxin who had already fallen into Qiyu's hands. In the end, Emosia turned to look at Lu Wuxin who was about to lose his life, and then decisively fled. Bang! The muffled sound caused Emosia's heart to tremble. He did not even turn his head to look, because he knew that Lu Wuxin's fate was already sealed. Most of the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates had escaped, and only a small number of shrimp soldiers and crab generals were left. They were simply not enough to stop the demons' advance. They also wanted to escape, but they were surrounded by the demons and could not escape at all. The demons swept away the previous haze and worked together to kill the remaining Yellow Emperor's old subordinates. Qiyu did not make a move. His gaze swept through the crowd and did not find Emosier and Yi Meiyu. He frowned. These two are really good at escaping. They actually escaped. Chiyu changed the topic and clenched his fists. However, can you escape from my Chiyu's palm? Chapter 1329. Chiyu clenched his fist as a terrifying energy was brewing within it. Whoosh, whoosh. The battle soul sword floated above his palm and spun non-stop. Kill? Suddenly, Chiyu roared and the battle soul sword flew out with a so sound. It actually turned into 2, then 4, and finally into tens of thousands of battle soul swords that chased after the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates. Emosier and the Yellow Emperor's remaining subordinates had already fled far away and could not see the demons. They thought that they were safe enough. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of air breaking came from behind them. It was like a deadly note that was getting closer and closer. Emosier and the rest were so scared that their bodies trembled. They quickly turned around and saw the battle soul sword shining with a dazzling sword light. It had already caught up to them. Dodge! Emosier shouted. He was an expert in the way of the sword and understood how terrifying this attack was. The Yellow Emperor's subordinates acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They took out their treasures and tried to block it. The war soul sword cut through iron like it was mud, and the treasures were shattered. They were not a match for the war soul sword at all. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor stared with their eyes wide open, looking at the wound on their chest in disbelief. The wounds were not big and looked like a thin line. However, blood flowed out from this small wound. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of people falling to the ground could be heard. Other than Emosier, the rest of them were dead. This was equivalent to more than half of the Yellow Emperor's subordinates being killed. It could be said that the losses were extremely heavy. Emosier did not have time to be shocked. At the crucial moment he took out the Ganjiang sword and blocked the attack with a clang. He was like a meteorite from outer space directly flying out. He only glanced at those subordinates who had fallen to the ground with a loud bang from afar. Then he didn't dare to linger in the slightest. He didn't even have time to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth before he fled as fast as he could. Emosier was shocked. He knew that Chiyu's cultivation had far surpassed his. When Chiyu was enraged, blood flowed. He had no way to block it. If he did not escape quickly, the others would end up like him. He could only run for his life and luckily preserve his life. Right now, only by reviving Master can we fight against Chiyu. I have to revive Master as soon as possible. Emosier secretly made up his mind. Chiyu looked at the only figure that escaped but didn't give chase. Instead, he said disdainfully, "The next time I see you, it will be the day of your death, Emosier." Ancestor. Looking at the wise and mighty Chiyu, the demon race quickly surrounded him. Chiyu looked at them indifferently and said, "From today onwards, I will restore the glory of the Ninely tribe." Where are the demons? The demon race no longer exists. From now on, you will be a member of the Ninely tribe. Chiyu looked at them with burning eyes and said resolutely. The Jiuli tribe was a tribe formed after the Wu tribe absorbed other tribes. It was also the predecessor of the demon tribe. Chiyu returned to his original state, intending to restore the glory of the Ninely tribe. These demons were his bargaining chips. "I will change you and make you a true member of the Ninely tribe." Chiyu roared and slowly rose into the air. He was like a god, floating in the air and looking down at the people below. He opened his hands as if he was hugging the air. His 10 fingertips lit up with resplendent light. Ninely tribe, reappear in the world. Chiyu roared and the light on his fingertips grew. In the end, it flew out from his fingertips and fell on the crowd like a heavy downpour. These beams of light silently merged into their foreheads. These people trembled and gradually their spirit, chi and spirit were experiencing tremendous changes. In the end, a ray of light rushed out from their glabella and turned into an ancient symbol. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Chiyu with a different gaze. "Master." Everyone shouted in unison. There was no such thing as an ancestor. From today onwards, Chiyu was their master. Chiyu had awakened their Ninely bloodline and made everyone submit to him. However, this method could not be used on the Wu tribe. This was because he could not control the bloodline of the Wu tribe. Only the bloodline of the Ninely tribe that had grown stronger could be controlled by him. Back then, Chiyu wanted to strengthen the Ninely tribe, so he used a great divine ability and added a spell into their bloodline. This spell could be passed down in the bloodline and would never lose its effect. When he needed it, as long as he awakened this bloodline, all the Ninely tribe would have to take revenge on him. No one would question his orders. This required his cultivation to reach a certain level before he could use this divine ability. Previously, his cultivation was not high enough, so he could only rely on his identity as an ancestor to lead these people. Now, he was not satisfied with his identity as an ancestor. He needed greater authority, and that was the Ninely bloodline. These people were no longer demons. After activating the bloodline of the Ninely tribe, they had become the true Ninely tribe. They would only listen to Qi Yu's orders. Whether it was a mountain of swords or a sea of flames, they would carry out his orders without hesitation. They would not give him any discount. Qi Yu looked at his high-spirited subordinates with satisfaction and said, "Tang Zheng, you went against me and ruined my plan. If I don't kill you, others will think that I, Qi Yu, am a pushover. Let's go back to the base camp." Qi Yu led his men back to the base camp. From afar he saw that the base camp was in a mess. His men were either dead or injured. Qi Yu flew into a rage. After his subordinates reported in detail, he understood that this was Tang Zheng's doing. Qi Yu's eyes were about to spit fire. The others were also filled with righteous indignation. They were eager to try and immediately cut Tang Zheng into 8 pieces. "Everyone listen to my orders. Heal your injuries and recuperate here. 10 days later we will flatten the capital and kill Tang Zheng." Qi Yu became unbridled and fearless. Hearing this, everyone cheered thunderously. Capital. Tang Zheng had already been back for 2 days. The day before he had already buried everyone. After that, everyone started to cultivate without stopping. The villa had been further expanded. All the witch clan lived here and were heavily guarded. Not a single fly was let in. Although the losses in this battle were great, the gains were not small. Everyone had been baptized by the flames of war and had a deeper understanding of their own cultivation. Especially the witch clan, they had activated the wild aura, which made their cultivation twice the result with half the effort. Their cultivation was rising rapidly. Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi had experienced an evenly matched battle. They had a more intuitive and profound understanding of the strength of today's experts. Therefore the two felt a strong sense of urgency and pressure. They silently decided to improve their cultivation. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he was thinking about another thing. Qi Yu had escaped. With his understanding of Qi Yu would definitely not give up. Qi Yu came to attack. Could they stop Qi Yu? He didn't know. Tang Zheng did not have an answer. But in fact, he already had a vague answer in the depths of his heart. It was difficult enough. Saint King was already at the 2nd stage of the Mahayana realm. Qi Yu could only be higher. Otherwise he would not be able to suppress the devil army. He still did not know that Saint King was dead. He could not estimate Qi Yu's cultivation after he recovered. But if Qi Yu came to attack, they would not be able to stop him. What should he do? There were so many people around him. He had to do everything he could to protect them. This was his responsibility. He racked his brains for an entire day. Finally, his attention fell on his inner demon. "Inner demons, is there really no way to break the cage set by Qi Yu?" Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. The inner demons did not answer directly. Instead, he asked thoughtfully, "What's your plan?" "I'll let you out," Tang Zheng said bluntly. The inner demons were overjoyed. "Really? A gentleman's word cannot be taken back." The heart demon's joy didn't last long as it suddenly felt gloomy. It said dejectedly, "But the cage is too strong. I've tried several times but I haven't succeeded. What method do you have to break through it?" Qi Yu kept saying that only he could open the cage. "What's the secret?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. The inner demon was silent for a while before saying, "This old fellow likes to deliberately mystify and deceive people, making it hard to see through him. But this time it's obviously true. Because I tried so many times, I really can't think of any other way." This was the helplessness of the inner demons. His cultivation was not weaker than Qi Yu's, but he was imprisoned in the cage. He had a lot of skills, but it was like his hands and feet were tied. There was nowhere to use them. "Do you want to be imprisoned here for the rest of your life?" "Of course not," the inner demon said without thinking. "But what can I do? The cage is too strong. I can't break it at all. If I let you out, how will you repay me?" Tang Zheng suddenly asked, his voice breaking the heavens and earth. "You'll let me out?" The inner demons was shocked. "How is that possible? Even I can't break the cage. How can you do it with your little cultivation?" Hearing his undisguised distrust, Tang Zheng was not angry. Instead he was happy. The more the inner demons did not believe him, the more he could use his mentality to gain more bargaining chips. "Don't worry about what method I use. I just want to know how you'll repay me." Tang Jing persistently asked. The inner demons laughed. He did not believe Tang Jing at all. He said casually, "If you really let me out, no matter what you want, I'll agree." Suddenly he changed the topic. "But don't expect me to be like the witch tribe and submit to you wholeheartedly. The inner demons, did not submit to either Qi Yu or the Yellow Emperor tens of thousands of years ago. After tens of thousands of years have passed, I will not submit to a brat like you." The inner demons was still very cautious. He did not rush to sell himself out. Tang Jing did not expect the inner demons to submit to him. After all, he had confronted Qi Yu and the Yellow Emperor. In the end, he would rather be suppressed than submit to anyone. How could he be willing to submit to him? Tang Jing did not think so highly of himself. He said calmly, "What kind of person do you think I am? What kind of person are you? How can I ask you to submit to me? I don't have such a big appetite." The inner demon said proudly, "It's good that you know this. Then what do you want?" Chapter 1330. The inner demons laughed wildly and looked at Tang Jing with interest, saying, "You really want to raise this condition? Let me remind you, there is no chance for you to go back on your word." Tang Jing nodded and said, "Of course I won't go back on my word. You just need to tell me if you agree or not." "Why wouldn't I agree?" The inner demons laughed mockingly. "It's just a pity that your wishful thinking didn't work out. Your painstaking efforts will go to waste." Tang Jing was unmoved and said calmly, "You don't have to worry about that." "Okay, then I agree. Now can you tell me how to help me break the confinement?" The inner demons asked lazily, not holding any hope at all. It was just a routine question. "Do you still remember Qi Yu's heart blood?" Tang Jing asked. "Of course I remember. Isn't it in Qi Yu's heart? What does that have to do with it?" The inner demons asked in confusion. Tang Jing smiled indifferently. Normal people wouldn't think of this because they weren't involved. They didn't feel the power of Qi Yu's heart blood and its enormous power. "I felt it, so I have the deepest impression and the most right to speak." The inner demons disagreed. "You have the most right to speak, but what's the use? Don't tell me that breaking the confinement has something to do with Qi Yu's heart blood." The inner demons knew about the existence of Qi Yu's heart blood, but they never thought about the connection between Qi Yu's heart blood and the confinement. Even Tang Jing had never thought about this connection. It was a sudden thought. Although he hadn't tested it, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. What if it succeeded? He would treat it as a last resort. Why did he think that Qi Yu's heart blood could break the confinement? This was because Qi Yu had always said that Qi Yu's blood contained a part of his power, which was very important to him. Later on, he had no choice but to leave Tang Jing's body. A portion of Qi Yu's heart blood's energy fused with Qi Yu's soul and was taken away. However, a portion of Qi Yu's heart blood's energy remained. All this time, Tang Jing had never touched this part of Qi Yu's heart. Perhaps it was because he was afraid of Qi Yu and thought that the things he left behind might not be 100% safe. Unless he had no other choice, he would not take the risk. However, things were different now. If Qi Yu's blood could really break the cage, then even if it was risky, he would still take the risk. At this critical juncture, a certain amount of wool was worth a try. Since Qi Yu's heart blood contained a portion of Qi Yu's power, then would this portion of power be able to break through the cage? This was what he had guessed on the spot from Qi Yu's solemn attitude and tone. Tang Jing spoke tirelessly and told them his deduction. The inner demons did not say a word, as if they were shocked by these words. Tang Jing couldn't help but feel a bit proud. He asked with a smile, "Now you know that I didn't lie to you, right?" The inner demons suddenly froze and said unhappily, "Isn't this called lying? You brat, you're just making fun of me." Tang Jing helplessly rolled his eyes. "Do you think I'm that bored?" "You're that bored," the inner demons said without hesitation. Qi Yu's heart blood does contain Qi Yu's power, but the confinement was created by Qi Yu using a special ability. It requires a corresponding ability to break through. You're just saying that Qi Yu's heart blood can break through the confinement. Don't you think it's too simple and too childish? In the face of the inner demon's barrage of questions, Tang Jing did not panic. Instead, he asked with a smile, "Do you trust Qi Yu that much? He's an enemy. Do you not discount his words completely?" "What can I do if I don't trust him?" the inner demons asked. "In any case, I don't trust Qi Yu that much. Nothing is absolute. There's always a way." Tang Jing was full of confidence. The inner demons did not know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, he said unhappily, "All right, since you're so confident, then I'll wait and see." Tang Jing did not say anything else. He calmed his mind and focused all his attention on Qi Yu's heart. He had absorbed Qi Yu's heart blood before, so he was familiar with it. However, this time was different. He did not want to use Qi Yu's heart blood to break through the confinement. He did not want to absorb it for his own use. When he urged his power, Qi Yu's heart beat faster. In a trance, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. Tang Jing came to a blood-red world, a world that was both familiar and strange. He did not panic. Last time, when the demons activated the Jiuli soul transfer formation, Tang Jing, Qi Yu, and the inner demon's consciousness had entered this world. This was the world in Qi Yu's heart. Tang Jing immediately saw a man with a white face and no beard. He looked like a scholar. It was the famous inner demons. This was the inner demon's body. However, the inner demons were imprisoned in a confinement. In this blood-red world, this confinement was particularly different. Traces of light flowed in the confinement. The inner demons had tried to break through many times, but they were all blocked. He was completely exhausted. In the end, he gave up all hope and didn't try any further. The inner demons looked at Tang Zheng and said, "Quickly begin. I also want to see the result." In fact, the inner demons was very conflicted. He hoped that Tang Zheng would succeed, but he judged that it was absolutely impossible. This was a very contradictory matter. Tang Zheng nodded slightly. His hands reached into the void and urged his power. True Qi flowed out from his palms. Whoosh whoosh. The wind blew. A strange wind spread out from his palms and then engulfed the entire blood-red world. This wind quickly flew back from all directions and fell into Tang Zheng's palms. The wind gathered in his palms and a dot of red appeared in his palms. After a while, the wind stopped. A drop of extremely bright blood appeared in his palms. It was sparkling and translucent and rolled in his palms. This was the blood he had extracted from Qi Yu's heart blood and absorbed into his palms. Although the inner demons were also trapped in Qi Yu's heart, they could not do this. This was because Tang Zheng was now the master of Qi Yu's heart. Therefore he could do this as he pleased. The inner demons stared at Qi Yu's heart blood. Their usually calm expressions became excited. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. How could he not know the inner demon's thoughts? He pushed his hands forward and Qi Yu's heart blood rolled out from his palms. Whoosh! Qi Yu's heart blood flew toward the confinement. The inner demons immediately held their breaths. They were unwilling to look away from Qi Yu's heart blood. It's close. Qi Yu's heart blood is close. The inner demons secretly shouted. Tang Jing also stared at Qi Yu's heart blood with full concentration. Finally, Qi Yu's heart blood was poured into the confinement. The flowing light on the confinement immediately came to life. It was suffused with a myriad of colors and was exceptionally brilliant. However, the heart blood did not fall from the confinement. Instead, it stuck closely to the confinement. Moreover, there seemed to be a force driving it, allowing it to freely move around the confinement. Chapter 1331. Qi Yu's blood flowed through the confinement, leaving behind a smear of red wherever it passed. When Qi Yu's blood flowed through the entire confinement, the light of the confinement was completely covered and turned blood red. Step back. Tang Jing sensed something and reminded them loudly. The inner demons quickly retreated to the middle of the confinement, distancing themselves from the fences on all sides. Bang! With a loud explosion, the confinement exploded. The seemingly indestructible fences were torn apart, turning into blood-red spots of light. Finally, they disappeared. The inner demons looked at this scene in disbelief. He never thought it would be so simple. He had worked so hard and tried so many times, but it was all to no avail. Tang Jing used a drop of Qi Yu's blood to break the confinement. The contrast was too strong. It made him feel like he was in a trance and all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. Tang Jing's eyebrows also curved into a smile. He never would have thought that he would succeed on his first try. Therefore, it was not that it was impossible but that he could not think of it. Once he thought of something and followed it, he might be able to reap some benefits. Qi Yu probably never dreamed that Tang Zheng would think of using Qi Yu's blood to break the confinement. After all, Qi Yu's blood was incomparably precious, and every bit used was a little less. Even a drop of Qi Yu's blood contained endless power. The inner demons raised his foot and took a step forward. There was no movement. He tried to take a few more steps forward and crossed the fences of the original confinement. There was still no reaction. The ecstasy in the inner demon's eyes was like fireworks. They immediately exploded and cheered, "It's really a success. The confinement is really gone." It was no wonder that he was so excited. After all, he had been suppressed in that huge bronze coffin for tens of thousands of years and had not seen the light of day. Every minute he lived in that kind of life was not a pleasure but a torture. Later he finally escaped from the bronze coffin, but he still did not regain his freedom. He was trapped in Chiyu's heart with Chiyu. In the end he was even trapped in a cage by Chiyu, which made him even more sullen. He had long wanted to break out of this cage and soar into the sky. But the reality of the situation made him despair. He raised his head and stared at Tang Jing with burning eyes. "We did it." Tang Jing nodded solemnly and said, "That's right. It seems that Chiyu's words can't be completely trusted. What he said about him being the only one who can break the confinement, it seems that he was just bluffing." The inner demon shook his head and sighed. "I'm not bluffing. Your Chiyu's blood and sweat is a part of Chiyu. That's why you can't leave him if you want to break out of this cage." Tang Jing shrugged and said indifferently, "But now that Chiyu's heart is in my body, it's not his anymore. Fine, there's no need to argue about this." The inner demons changed the topic and looked at Tang Jing with a smile that was not a smile. "You're letting me go like this. Don't tell me you're not worried that I'll go back on my words and not abide by our agreement. Moreover, I'll take over your body and take over your body?" The moment these words were spoken, the atmosphere immediately changed. An invisible pressure enveloped Tang Jing's body. But his expression did not change at all. He was calm as if these words had nothing to do with him. Tang Jing looked straight at the inner demons and asked, "Will you?" "Why not? After all, your body is a delicious cake. Even Chiyu wants to take it for himself. Naturally, I'm tempted as well." The inner demons said casually and without hiding anything. You're really straightforward. I'm standing right next to you. Quickly destroy me and then take over my body." Tang Jing spread out his hands as if he did not mind at all. The inner demon frowned. If it was when he first met Tang Jing, he would have attacked him like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey without saying a word. But now he did not dare to act rashly. He already knew too much about Tang Jing. It was precisely because he knew too much that he knew Tang Jing was not simple. Every time Tang Jing did something, he would have his own considerations. He would weigh the pros and cons. He would not carelessly ignore them. Tang Jing was so defenseless that he allowed the inner demons to take over his body. The inner demons would be fools if they did that. He must have other methods. If I really do that, I'm afraid I'll never be able to leave this place. The inner demons secretly pondered. In addition, his 9-yang saint body and the various mysterious techniques he cultivates are also very strange. I can't understand them at all. If there's a backlash, then I'll be in for a tragedy. The inner demons weighed the pros and cons and suddenly grinned. "Ha, young man, do you think I'm the kind of person who goes back on my words and bites the hand that feeds me? Chiyu and I are not jackals of the same tribe. I can't thank you enough for letting me out of this cage. How can I go back on my words?" Tang Jing secretly sighed in relief. He actually did not have full confidence in dealing with the inner demons. Originally, this move was a risky move. He had no choice but to make this choice. He deliberately calmed down. Finally, he managed to suppress the inner demons, making them not dare to act rashly. Tang Jing's calm and collected expression made the inner demons even more unable to figure out what was true and what was false. It also made him even more certain of his judgment. Tang Jing definitely had another trump card. If he made a move himself, then he would be looking for trouble. Tang Jing did not lose his momentum and directly said, "Inner demons, since I've already broken out of this cage, then it's time for you to keep your promise." The inner demons was not in a hurry to deny it. He smiled and said, "Are you sure you won't change your request? I can still give you one more chance to go back on your words." Tang Jing shook his head without hesitation. "There's no need to go back on my words. I've already made a decision, so it means I've already thought it through." The inner demons shrugged and resentfully said, "All right then. In any case, you're the one who's losing out, not me. Are you ready?" Tang Jing nodded. "Let's begin." After saying this, he held his breath. He actually knew that this condition of his was not very pleasing. It was even a bit of a waste of such a good opportunity. If he had raised some other conditions, he might have been able to obtain more substantial benefits. But he also had other considerations. The inner demons chuckled. "Young man, I know what you're thinking. Do you think no one has ever had this idea before? But they've all returned empty-handed. The Nightmare God art has very high requirements for the cultivator, but if I were to say that compared to my God art, it's actually very simple. This is because the requirements for my inner demon's art are much higher. After so many years, I've never met anyone who can cultivate my God art. Last time, I only taught you a little bit of it so anyone can cultivate it. But now what you want is my core God art. There's no way you can cultivate it." It turned out that one of Tang Zheng's conditions was for the inner demons to teach him the core inner demons art. The inner demons knew his situation, so when he heard this request, he laughed and even asked Tang Zheng to change it to another condition. Tang Zheng was unmoved and said calmly, "Whether or not I can cultivate it is my business. You don't have to worry about it." The inner demons rolled his eyes and said, "Fine, then take it." He stretched out a finger and pointed at Tang Zheng. Before his finger could reach Tang Zheng's forehead, a ray of light flew out from the inner demon's fingertip. Pop. The light entered Tang Zheng's forehead and then exploded in his brain, turning into a million rays of light. Tang Zheng didn't panic. He closed his eyes and calmed his mind, quietly feeling everything. The multicolored light slowly converged, and in the end, it turned into words that filled Tang Zheng's brain, flickering with light. Tang Zheng wasn't in a hurry to understand the mysteries within. He opened his eyes and looked at the inner demons. The inner demons asked jokingly, "How do you feel?" "I'll find time to study it." "Haha, then I'm looking forward to the results." Although he said so, the inner demons didn't believe that Tang Zheng could really understand the mysteries within. The inner demons generously passed his technique to Tang Zheng, not because he was selfless, but because he wasn't worried that Tang Zheng would learn it. "Now you'll have to fulfill the second condition," Tang Zheng said. "Of course I want to, but do you think I can deal with Qiyu in my current state?" The inner demon spread his hands and asked with a smile. Tang Zheng of course knew that he couldn't let the inner demons deal with Qiyu like this. The inner demons were just a strand of soul, they were no match for Qiyu. Therefore he had to find a way to let the inner demons out of his body and resurrect him. Without the cage, the inner demons could be freely resurrected, but how to resurrect them was a key problem. When Qiyu was resurrected, he had no choice but to choose Song Yu's body, which reduced his strength. The inner demons certainly didn't want to follow in Qiyu's footsteps. He definitely wanted to find a body that he was satisfied with. Tang Zheng thought about this problem but couldn't find a suitable choice, so he said, "Inner demons, of course I'll help you resurrect, but the key is how?" The inner demons wasn't stumped by this question. "I already have a suitable candidate." Tang Zheng asked in surprise, "Who?" The inner demon said mysteriously, "You'll know when the time comes." Tang Zheng frowned, deliberately mystifying. The inner demon smiled proudly, "This body is the most suitable. Although Qiyu was resurrected before me, I have a way to catch up." "Then I'll wait and see." Since the inner demons didn't want to say, he couldn't force them. In the end, he simply withdrew from Qiyu's heart. Walking out of the room, the villa wasn't quiet. Almost everyone was cultivating in their own rooms. Creak. Fang Shishir's door opened, and Huang Xiang respectfully opened the door. When Fang Shishir was cultivating in the room, Huang Xiang had been guarding the door, not letting anyone get close. Huang Xiang was conscientious, which made Tang Zheng feel relieved. Tian Chanzi's gift was really good. Fang Shishir smiled like a flower and walked towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng quickly walked up to her and held her hand. "How was it?" Fang Shishir smiled and nodded. Huang Xiang quietly stood to the side and glanced at Tang Zheng. He was so quiet that he looked like a puppet. The two of them talked about their experiences during cultivation as they walked out. Huang Xiang followed behind step by step. Suddenly Huang Xiang couldn't help but bump into Tang Zheng. Chapter 1332. Under normal circumstances, no matter how fast Huang Xiang was, Tang Zheng would definitely be able to dodge in time. After all, the difference in cultivation between the two was not small. For every two people who read romance novels, one of them had registered an account. But this time, Tang Zheng felt that his body seemed to be restrained by some kind of force, and he was unable to block him. The two of them were like magnets. Fang Shishir also noticed that something was wrong. She wanted to stop them, but it was too late. Bang! They collided with each other, but the force was not strong. Tang Zheng did not move at all, and he was stuck to Huang Xiang. Suddenly Tang Zheng felt a chill in his heart. It seemed that something had rushed out of his body and entered Huang Xiang's body. He was shocked and suddenly realized. He cried out, "Inner demons, are you messing with me?" The inner demons did not answer him. He quickly immersed his mind and his consciousness entered Qiyu's heart. Qiyu's heart was empty. There was no sign of the inner demons. The inner demons, he, actually left my body. That feeling just now was his soul leaving my body and entering Huang Xiang's body. Tang Zheng gradually understood. The inner demons had always said that they had found a good body that could catch up to Qiyu's strength. Even in his dreams, Tang Zheng would never have thought that the heart demon would actually have designs on Huang Xiang. In fact, After Huang Xiang became a puppet, his original consciousness had already been erased by Tian Chanzi. In other words, Huang Xiang was already dead. This body was just an empty shell, and only the most instinctive consciousness was left. This allowed him to cultivate without any distractions, and his speed improved by leaps and bounds. Huang Xiang was an ownerless body, and his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds to the soul formation realm. The inner demons indeed had a good eye for choosing him. However, this way Fang Shishir would lose a responsible bodyguard. Tang Zheng was indignant. No wonder the inner demons were deliberately mystifying things. He was worried that if he told the truth, Tang Zheng would interfere and prevent him from fusing with Huang Xiang's body. In fact, it was not difficult to achieve this. As long as the two were not in close contact, the inner demons would not be able to succeed. Just now, the two of them were very close to each other, so the inner demons cast a spell to make the two of them close together quickly, and he succeeded. Tang Zheng took a step back, while Huang Xiang stood in his original position. His originally infatuated expression changed, and traces of spirit energy were emitted from his eyes. Inner demons, have you gotten what you wanted? Tang Zheng asked impatiently. The inner demons did not answer. Fang Shishir was surprised and asked, "What's going on?" Tang Zheng sighed and said, "Shishir, I'm afraid you won't have a bodyguard in the future." Fang Shishir looked left and right, but did not understand what was going on. Haha. Suddenly, a loud laughter came from Huang Xiang's mouth. This laughter was very bold and full of dominance, making people who heard it uncontrollably swayed, as if it had magical powers. Fang Shishir quickly covered her ears and looked at Huang Xiang with a frown. Her eyes were full of curiosity and unfamiliarity. She knew Huang Xiang well enough. After all, she was his master. But this time she found Huang Xiang to be so unfamiliar. What's wrong? She thought that something bad happened to Huang Xiang and asked with concern. Tang Zheng immediately protected Fang Shishir behind him and used his secret technique to counteract the magic of the laughter. But in the villa area, everyone was alarmed by this laughter. Bang bang bang. All the doors of the villa were pushed open, and one by one strong figures rushed out from the door. The figures flew in all directions, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived beside the few people. At the same time, the witch clan guards outside the villa also rushed in, as if they were facing a great enemy. The reason why everyone had such a big reaction was because they were shocked by this laughter. The layman watched the show while the expert watched the skill. These people were not ordinary people, so they could hear the extraordinariness of this laughter. They understood that the person who could make this kind of laughter was definitely not an ordinary person. Everyone surrounded him so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through as they stared at Huang Xiang and then at Tang Zheng, not understanding what was going on. Tang Zheng's expression was cold and said, "Inner demons, stop laughing." The laughter suddenly stopped, and a sharp gaze looked at Tang Zheng, then swept across the crowd, full of condescension and disdain. Everyone felt as if there was a knife on their back, and they were all a little uncomfortable under this gaze. But their expressions were even more puzzled, especially when Tian Chanzi shouted, "Huang Xiang, what the hell are you doing?" The inner demons looked at Tian Chanzi with a smile and said, "From now on, there is no Huang Xiang in this world, only me, the inner demons." Who are the inner demons? Someone asked one after another. Everyone did not know much about the inner demons, and Tang Zheng did not say much before, so they could not help but look at him in confusion. But Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean Fairy had a deep impression of the battle in the 100,000 Mountains, especially the giant bronze coffin. Memories came flooding in like a tide, causing their nerves to immediately tense up. The inner demons have been resurrected. The two muttered to themselves, and their expressions were quite unnatural. This was especially true for Tian Chanzi, who had been possessed by a strand of the Yellow Emperor's soul and confronted the inner demons. During that battle, Tian Chanzi's body was almost completely controlled by the Yellow Emperor's soul. Tang Zheng had once mentioned the inner demons to the two, but it was only an understatement. When the two heard that the inner demons were imprisoned in a cage, they did not pay too much attention to it. They thought that the inner demons would definitely never see the light of day again. After all, Chiyu had solemnly vowed that no one but him could open the cage, and Chiyu would not be so kind as to return to Chiyu's heart to open the cage. But they never would have thought that things would not develop as they expected. Of course, I've been resurrected. From now on, I'm free to roam the world, and no one will ever be able to trap me again, the inner demon said loudly, high-spirited. Many people did not know much about the inner demons and looked at him suspiciously. They did not know where he got his confidence from, and why he dared to say such arrogant words. Tian Chanzi, I really want to thank you for preparing such a good body for me, the inner demon said to Tian Chanzi with a smile. Tian Chanzi's expression kept changing, and he did not know how to respond. Seeing that everyone was on guard, the inner demons moved his muscles and bones, making crackling sounds. Many people were frightened and they were ready to attack. The inner demon shook his head and sighed, "Don't even think about attacking me. You guys are not my match at all." Many people showed a doubtful expression, and it was obvious that they did not believe his words. But no one acted rashly and they all looked at Tang Zheng. Obviously he was the one who understood the situation the best. Inner demons, stop scaring people. You were deliberately mystifying because of this body. Now that you've succeeded, it's time to fulfill your promise. Tang Zheng quickly adjusted his attitude. Things had already come to this and there was no way he could change it. In fact, this was not a big loss to him, except that Fang Shishir had one less bodyguard. Comparing this bodyguard to the inner demons, it was obvious who was more useful. Therefore the inner demon's resurrection was more important to him, and could help him block the threat from Chiyu. When the others heard the word promise, they knew that there must be some agreement between them. The Empyrean Fairy could not wait to ask, "What promise?" "The inner demons will block Chiyu's attack for us." Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed, especially those who knew the strength of the inner demons. It was as if they had seen the dawn of hope, and their eyes were full of splendor. Everyone knew very well that after the Battle of Mount Tai, the demon race was defeated, and a large part of the reason was that Chiyu was injured and could not use his strength. But once he fully recovered, he would definitely find a way to get revenge. After all, the Battle of Mount Tai ruined the plan of the Wildlands, which was one of Chiyu's major plans. Now Chiyu must be furious. Tang Zheng knew Chiyu well, so he also knew that Chiyu would not let this go. He was in the light and Chiyu was in the dark. Besides consolidating his strength, there was no other way to avoid this revenge. "So, you released him from the confinement?" the Empyrean Fairy asked thoughtfully. Tang Zheng nodded. No one criticized Tang Zheng's decision. After all, everyone knew that the current situation was critical, and this was a decision he had no choice but to make. "Do you trust him?" the Empyrean Fairy asked directly. Tang Zheng stared at the inner demons with a burning gaze, saying, "The inner demons are famous and always keep their promises. If I go back on my words, I'm afraid I'll be ridiculed by the world. So, of course I trust him." He was greatly comforted by the high praise he had received from the inner demon. At the same time, these words shocked him. If he really did go back on his words, then his bad reputation would spread all over the world. When that time came, anyone who mentioned him would say that he went back on his words. He wasn't like other people who would do anything for power and status. He still cherished his own feathers and reputation. "No, I can't let the world think that I'm going back on my words and that I'm a treacherous villain. I'm not like Chiyu and the Yellow Emperor." The inner demons thought highly of himself and quickly rejected this idea in his heart. Of course, there was only one way to go back on his words and not let outsiders know. That was to kill everyone present. But he looked at the Empyrean Fairy and then at Tang Zheng and the others. He did not have full confidence that he could kill all of them and not let a single one escape. He let out a long sigh and suppressed the complicated thoughts in his heart. He said righteously, "What kind of person do you think I am? How can I be such a treacherous, despicable person?" Tang Zheng sighed in relief. Since the inner demons had accepted this praise, then at least they would not go back on their words in the short term. Hearing this, the others also felt relieved. Only Fang Shishir had a strange expression between her eyebrows. After all, she had been with Huang Xiang for so long. Although the other party was a puppet, Fang Shishir had a kind heart and would still feel a trace of reluctance. Tang Zheng was keenly aware of her thoughts. His heart moved and he said to the inner demons, "Inner demons, you deliberately mystified me and took over Huang Xiang's body when I wasn't paying attention. This is equivalent to taking away Shishir's bodyguard. You should at least compensate her a little. Otherwise, this will not live up to your illustrious reputation as the inner demons. Otherwise, in the future, people will say that you inner demons are just robbers." Hearing this, the inner demons was stunned. They did not expect that Tang Zheng would dare to make such an additional request. The others were also shocked. The atmosphere became a little strange. Fang Shishir suddenly raised her head and looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Chapter 1333. Fang Shishir's eyes lit up. It wasn't that she cared about the inner demon's so-called compensation, but Tang Zheng's concern made her feel very happy and sweet. You dare to ask me for something? The inner demon stared at Tang Zheng in surprise, his voice becoming deeper. Tang Zheng wasn't scared by the inner demon's imposing manner at all. He said calmly, you took over someone else's body, this is already a great benefit, shouldn't you be compensated? Young man, besides you, no one has ever asked me for so many things. Aren't you afraid of angering me and adding another enemy? The inner demons asked aggressively. Tang Zheng shook his head, I'm not afraid because you, the inner demons, are not unreasonable like other people. You are a reasonable person. The second half of the compliment made the inner demon's tense atmosphere collapse. He laughed loudly, haha, there are still people in this world who understand me. I am different from Qiyu and the Yellow Emperor. That's why they want to destroy me. Yes, since you have been resurrected, all the more reason to look for them to settle this debt. Tang Zheng encouraged. Of course, this is a deep hatred, how could I forget? I will definitely settle this debt with them. The hatred in the inner demon's words was very strong. Then how are you going to compensate Shirshir? Tang Zheng asked. The inner demons turned his head and looked at Fang Shirshir thoughtfully. He said, little girl, your cultivation is too weak and you can't practice my technique, so how to compensate is really a headache. I don't need compensation. Fang Shirshir shook her head. Why are you looking down on me, the inner demons? The inner demons frowned and asked unhappily. Fang Shirshir quickly waved her hand, that's not what I meant, but I am already very satisfied. When the others heard this, they quickly tried to persuade her. Tang Zheng also sighed. Fang Shirshir was too kind, rejecting such a good opportunity. But he didn't refute her, this was her choice and he respected her choice. The inner demons stared at Fang Shirshir, as if trying to distinguish whether she was telling the truth or not. Fang Shirshir's heart was magnanimous and her expression was magnanimous. In the end, the inner demons had to admit that her words were from the bottom of her heart. Suddenly, the inner demon's eyes lit up and said meaningfully, you don't want to accept my compensation, I will give you compensation. What I don't want to give, no one can have. On the contrary, what I want to give, no one can refuse. These words were incomparably tyrannical, but when Tang Zheng heard it, he was suddenly stunned and immediately realized that this was a great thing. Good people will be rewarded. Fang Shirshir was so kind that she had such a pleasant surprise. Fang Shirshir opened her mouth, obviously still wanting to refuse. When the others saw this, their hearts jumped to their throats and they couldn't wait to cover her mouth. The inner demons didn't give her a chance to refuse, and gently pointed his finger. The two of them were very close to each other, and this finger pointed right between Fang Shirshir's eyebrows. She was suddenly startled and her mind was in a trance. Finally, she softly fell to the ground. Tang Zheng's eyes were quick and he quickly caught her. He angrily stared at the inner demons and sternly asked, what did you do to her? The inner demons took back his hand and deliberately said mysteriously, when she wakes up, you will naturally know. Tang Zheng didn't continue to ask, knowing that it would be useless to ask. The others' hearts were also in their throats. If something happened to Fang Shirshir, Tang Zheng would probably directly raise his sword and slash at the inner demons. The inner demons wasn't worried about Fang Shirshir at all, and casually said, I promise to help you deal with Qiyu. When he attacks, I will naturally make my move. As he said this, he walked out of the door. The packed crowd automatically parted to make a path. Where are you going? Tang Zheng asked. This world is completely different from tens of thousands of years ago. When I was in your body, I couldn't see it clearly. Now, I want to see this so-called modern world. As his voice fell, the inner demons had already disappeared through the door. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Will he come back? Tian Chanzi asked worriedly. Tang Zheng said without the slightest worry, since he said so, he will definitely come back. Everyone don't worry. He wrapped his arms around Fang Shirshir's waist and carried her up, saying, I will take her back to the room to rest. He went upstairs, entered the room and carefully placed Fang Shirshir on the bed. She looked peaceful without any signs of pain. Moreover, she seemed to be shrouded by a mysterious force. Even Tang Zheng couldn't completely see through this force. It seems that the inner demons didn't lie. He really is compensating Shirshir, but I don't know what this so-called compensation is. Shirshir, you must wake up soon. He quietly guarded Fang Shirshir's side, not leaving her side at all. That serene face had a kind of exceptionally soul-stirring beauty, causing Tang Zheng to be intoxicated as he looked at it. Fang Shirshir had been with him all this time. They had experienced many hardships, and had become an indispensable part of his life. Although he had other women, Fang Shishi's position was irreplaceable. In the evening, the door opened and Yi Dingdang tiptoed in. She stretched her neck to look at Fang Shishi and asked in a low voice, "She still hasn't woken up?" Tang Jing shook his head. "You go down and eat. I will look after her," Yi Dingdang said. "No, I will look after her. If anything happens, I can deal with it immediately. Moreover, when she wakes up, she will definitely want to see me," Tang Jing said gently. Yi Dingdang wasn't jealous. She leaned into Tang Jing's arms and said, "Shishi will definitely be very happy to hear this." Tang Jing hugged Yi Dingdang and stroked her black hair, saying, "Dingdang, you have suffered because of me." Yi Dingdang raised her head and kissed Tang Jing's chin with her cherry lips. She smiled and said, "Silly, we are willing. So many beautiful women want this opportunity but don't have it." Although she was smiling happily, Tang Jing knew the bitterness in it and could only hug her tighter. "I'm a greedy guy. I don't want any of you to leave me. I know this is very scoundrel, but this is what I think. I will do my best to give you the best. I will protect you and love you forever," Tang Jing said resolutely. When Yi Dingdang heard this, she couldn't help but be moved. She covered his mouth with her small hand and said as if in a dream, "Don't say any more, I understand, we all understand. Otherwise we wouldn't have stayed by your side. I'll never leave you. With you guys, what else can I ask for?" Tang Jing held her hand and said contentedly. Yi Dingdang's lips curled into a smile. She thought, "With you I am satisfied for the rest of my life." And Fang Shishi made a sound. The two of them quickly stood up and stared at Fang Shishi. They asked, "Shishi, are you awake? How are you?" Fang Shishi slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Tang Jing's face. Her heart warmed and she said, "I'm fine." Tang Jing quickly sat on the bed and helped her up. He let her lean on his chest and asked, "Is there anything wrong with your body?" The corner of Fang Shishi's mouth curled up into a faint smile as she said, "I feel extremely good. All of my meridians are unobstructed and my true qi is even more vigorous. More importantly, there is something more in my brain." "What is it?" "My divine sense is more powerful. Moreover, I am immune to spiritual attacks," Fang Shishi said. "Immune to spiritual attacks?" Tang Jing was shocked. Yi Dingdang had a suspicious look on her face. Obviously, she did not understand the meaning behind these words. However, Tang Jing was different. He knew a lot about spiritual attacks. Back then, in the deep canyon of the prehistoric heavenly tomb, when they opened the bronze coffin, the inner demons used a spiritual attack on them, causing them to fall into their own illusions. Spiritual attacks were also the inner demons' most powerful attacks. His actual combat level was not very high, but his spiritual attacks were extremely terrifying, causing his enemies to be unable to guard against them. In fact, even if they were on guard, it would be useless. They would still be caught in his trap. Nightmare's traceless dream was also a type of spiritual attack, but it could not be compared to the inner demons. Fang Shishi was immune to spiritual attacks, which meant that in the future, when she met Yi Meiyu's traceless dream, it would have no effect on her at all. It was just that he did not know if Fang Shishi would be immune to the attacks of the inner demons. If she was also immune, then she would be the first person in the world to be immune to the attacks of the inner demons. Although Tang Jing had used the exorcist mirror to expel the inner demons in the Langya Pavilion, he had a certain degree of immunity to spiritual attacks. However, he was still unable to achieve 100% immunity. That was why he saw himself in the bronze coffin. The other two did not understand the mystery behind it, so Tang Jing carefully explained it to them. The two of them were enlightened. Fang Shishi could not hide her joy. Yi Dingdang rolled her eyes and said, "Shishi, this way you won't have to be afraid of Yi Meiyu's attacks in the future. Yi Meiyu has always been against me and sees me as a thorn in her side. Furthermore, the assassins we encountered in the ordinary balance were sent by her." Fang Shishi did not know that there was such a complicated story. She opened her eyes wide in shock and asked, how could she be so heartless as to make a move on her own family? What does she not dare to do? Don't you see that the Ye family has already been turned into a pile of loose sand by her? Although I don't like this Ye family, every time I hear my father talk about this matter, I will sigh and sigh endlessly. This was all caused by Yi Meiyu. Yi Dingdang said indignantly. Shishi, don't worry. This kind of person will definitely have retribution. Fang Shishi advised. Yi Meiyu will always target me. Her heart's dream traceless technique is extremely powerful and I can't break it. So, you must help me in the future. We are sisters, so don't be so polite. If we work together and fight against a common enemy, we will definitely be able to defeat her. Fang Shishir held onto Yi Dingdong's hand. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Alright, don't worry. Yi Meiyu killed Nightmare, and when the truth is revealed in the future, Mo Xie will definitely not let her off. At that time we won't even need to do anything and she won't have a good ending. Tang Jing comforted. He did not have the slightest good impression of Yi Meiyu. Just as they were talking about Yi Meiyu, she was standing in a mysterious place, surrounded by the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Chapter 1334. These containers that were carved with complicated patterns were jade bottles. They were sparkling and translucent, emitting a gentle luster. All the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor focused their gazes on these jade bottles. Their gazes were burning with passion, even more fanatical than when they stared at the gold, silver, and jewelry. Under Yi Meiyu's calm appearance, a storm was raging in her heart. He was also looking forward to the resurrection of the Yellow Emperor. This time they had gathered here to resurrect the Yellow Emperor. Some time ago they had spent a lot of energy and manpower to search for the life totem. They had all visited the 8 life totem lands formed by nature and carefully avoided the people sent by Tang Jing. Those who participated in this operation were all the elites of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. There were even a few times when Mo Xie personally took action. Naturally, it was very easy and did not alarm Tang Jing's men. Tang Jing was still in the dark. He thought that his plan was flawless and did not give the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor an opportunity to obtain the pure yang energy between heaven and earth. However, what they didn't know was that Mo Xie had already obtained everything he wanted without leaving a single trace. Gathering the soul of the Golden Crow again and allowing the Yellow Emperor to reappear in the world was not too far-fetched. Mo Xie waved his hand, and all the jade bottles flew into the air and arranged themselves in a certain order. The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor moved and spread out in all directions, forming a strange formation. Everyone raised their hands high and chanted. Waves of magic power spread out from their bodies and enveloped the air. Open! Mo Xie shouted, and the seal of the jade bottle automatically unlocked. Waves of pure yang energy flew out from the jade bottle and instantly gathered in the air, resonating with the magic power. Mo Xie was in high spirits and a ray of light flew out from his hand. It was the Ganjiang sword, and the blood-red sword light dyed half of the sky red. The Ganjiang sword steadily stopped in mid-air, at the center of the intersection of the two forces. Soul of the Golden Crow, gather. Back then, the souls of the Golden Crow were all hit by the sun shooting arrows and exploded into pieces, scattering on Sky Mountain. Mo Xie's plan was to use the pure yang energy to gather the souls of the Golden Crow scattered on Sky Mountain like a magnet. Without a doubt, this was a very clever plan. It was much faster than searching for the soul of the Golden Crow in every corner. Sky Mountain was too big, and the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were too few. They were not able to handle such a large amount of work. This time, they had gathered at the peak of Sky Mountain under the cover of night to avoid being noticed by others. They wanted to gather the scattered souls of the Golden Crows. Actually, ever since he knew Mo Xie, Tang Jing, and Tang Jing. However, these people were Mo Xie was the Golden Crow Yi. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, Mo Xie used a camouflage technique to avoid these people and successfully cast a spell on Heavenly Mountain. Mo Xie had learned to be smart. She did not make a big fuss. Instead, she was sneaky. She even set up restrictions to prevent outsiders from seeing the signs of the spell. Therefore, the people that Tang Jing had sent to investigate the vicinity of Sky Mountain did not notice anything unusual. They did not realize that this was an unusual night. When Mo Xie's voice fell, the sword radiance of the Ganjiang sword surged. A blood-red light rushed into the sky, and the sword hummed continuously. The pure yang energy gathered around the Ganjiang sword. Under the control of a mysterious power, it was like a giant magnet, rapidly absorbing the souls of the Golden Crow on Sky Mountain. A spot of light rose from a corner of the sky, like a firefly, and gathered at the peak of Sky Mountain. Another spot of light rose into the sky. These spots of light were the souls of the Golden Crow scattered in every corner of Sky Mountain. Not long after, countless spots of light rose from Sky Mountain and streaked across the sky. They were more dazzling than a meteor shower and gathered at the Ganjiang sword. Finally, Tang Jing's people on the Heavenly Mountain discovered some clues, and all of them stared at the scene in shock. What's going on? These people looked at each other, unable to figure out what was going on. In the sky, more and more spots of light gathered together, becoming bigger and bigger. The pitch-black sky slowly brightened, like the dawn of the rising sun. Monsieur and the others were overjoyed when they saw this scene. This was the beginning of success. Everyone was even more focused as they continued to cast their spells. Unknowingly, a sun hung in the sky. The sunlight immediately dispelled the darkness, and the peak of Sky Mountain became as bright as day. Light shot in all directions, and not long after, the foot of Sky Mountain also became bright. The souls of the Golden Crow, the souls of the Golden Crow. Tang Zheng's subordinates finally noticed something and shouted. Quick, report this. This is the work of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Damn it, they must be using a camouflage to avoid us. Some smart people immediately understood the reason and stomped their feet hatefully. They immediately dialed Tang Zheng's number. In the middle of the night, Tang Zheng, who was far away in the capital, was woken up by the ringing of his phone. He sat up straight as if he had a spring installed. Hello? Master, the souls of the Golden Crow have been reunited. A witch shouted impatiently, her voice trembling. Tang Zheng jumped to the floor with a bang. His sleepiness was completely gone, and the hand that was holding the phone couldn't help but tighten. What did you say? This cry of alarm woke the person on the bed. Wu rubbed his eyes and sat up from the bed asking, What's wrong? Tang Zheng gestured for him to keep quiet. Wu understood and his heart trembled. He quickly got off the bed and stood beside Tang Zheng, looking at him worriedly. I don't know what method the Yellow Emperor's subordinates used, but they are reuniting the souls of the Golden Crow. The other party took a deep breath and repeated. The soul of the Golden Crow has been reunited. Tang Zheng finally heard it clearly, but he couldn't help but shout loudly. His voice was so loud that he was shocked. Suddenly, a ray of light shone in from the window. It was like a ray of morning light, dispelling the darkness in the room and landing on Tang Zheng's shoulder. Tang Zheng bathed in the sunlight, his body dyed golden. His brows immediately furrowed into a Chuan character as he looked at the sunlight in the sky. Wu looked at the clock on the wall. It was clearly 2 a.m. She immediately opened her mouth wide and her chin almost fell to the ground. It's only the middle of the night, how can there be a sun? Hearing this, Wu couldn't help but exclaim, but Tang Zheng's heart sank to the bottom. He already understood that all of this was caused by the soul of the Golden Crow being reunited. That meant that this world would be plunged into misery and suffering. The people outside the house were also frightened by this scene. The witches all raised their heads to look at the sky, thinking that they were seeing things. At the same time, many of the night owls who had not slept in the middle of the night were completely dumbstruck by this scene. On the streets and alleys, on the rooftops of various buildings, many people gradually gathered as they watched this inconceivable scene. Although many unimaginable things had happened all over the world in the past year, the sun in the middle of the night was still shocking. Master, what should we do now? The voice on the phone finally pulled back Tang Zheng's thoughts. His heart trembled as he said in a deep voice, Don't fight head-on. First, find out the situation of the witch clan and report to me at any time. After hanging up the phone, Tang Zheng rushed out of the bedroom. Wu, wearing a thin nightgown, chased after him. Upstairs, the other rooms opened one after another. Everyone saw Tang Zheng and Wu walking out of the same room. No one was surprised. The relationship between them was already half open. Everyone knew that it was normal for them to sleep together in the middle of the night. There was no need to make a fuss. The sun is out? Someone pointed out the window and exclaimed. The others also nodded. They were obviously frightened by this scene. Tang Zheng comforted him in a deep voice, Everyone, don't panic for the time being. These people had basically experienced several life and death battles, and their nerves were already very strong. They were not too worried, and after hearing Tang Zheng's words, they all asked what was going on. Tang Zheng did not hide anything and said truthfully, the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor are reuniting with the soul of the Golden Crow. What? Then wouldn't that be another 10 days? No, 9 suns in the sky. Tang Zheng remained silent, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. In the middle of the night, without nature's own sun, the 9 souls of the Golden Crow rose into the sky, which meant that there were only 9 so-called suns. Then what should we do? This news really shocked everyone. They all asked for countermeasures and all kinds of suggestions began to be made. But in the end, they all looked at Tang Zheng, waiting for him to make the final decision. Although Tang Zheng was very anxious, he was not in a hurry. He methodically arranged, Empyrean Fairy, Thundercloud Beast, Scarlet Lunar Beast, we will go to Sky Mountain to stop the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. Tian Shanzi, you and the others will stay at home and protect yourselves. If anything happens, contact me immediately. He had to be constantly on guard against the attacks of the demon clan or other hostile forces, so there must be someone important at home. But this time they would definitely need a powerful force to stop the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. The Empyrean Fairy and the other mythical beasts could work together to maximize their effectiveness. As for Xiaobai, if it woke up, it would be even more effective. However, this little guy seemed to have not completely digested the things it had absorbed and was still hibernating. Tang Jing had gone through many tests and established an absolute WeChat. Therefore, when he said these words, no one questioned or refuted, which saved a lot of time. Somersault cloud. Tang Jing shouted without hesitation. The somersault cloud appeared outside the door. The others went back to their rooms to change their clothes and jumped on the somersault cloud. Then they flew towards Sky Mountain. The light on Sky Mountain became more and more intense. The second soul of the Golden Crow had already risen. The hot air dispersed the cold wind in the middle of the night. The scorching heat descended on the earth, and the temperature rose rapidly. When they saw the second soul of the Golden Crow, the ordinary people immediately remembered the scene of the 10 suns in the sky a long time ago. It caused a lot of chaos. Could it be that 10 suns were going to rise in the middle of the night? At that time the heat would be unbearable and everyone would die from the heat. Panic immediately spread through the streets and alleys. Moreover, the soul of the Golden Crow gradually woke people up from their sleep. Suddenly, the whole land woke up in the middle of the night. Chapter 1335. The earth woke up in the middle of the night and so did the people who lived there. They looked at the scene in horror. Looking at the 2 suns above their heads, the memories in the depths of their minds came back, and they were scared stiff. The smart ones immediately found a place to hide. Otherwise, when more suns rose in the sky, they would be roasted into human jerky. Everywhere was in chaos. Inside the high walls of the inner palace, 100 Faces, who was disguised as the leader, stood in front of the bed. When the first sun rose, he sensed something and got up. The mechanical warriors also came to his door, as if they were facing a great enemy. Junko also got up from the bed. She was naked and her slim body made people's blood boil. 100 Faces did not turn his head, and he looked at the sky in a daze. Junko hooked her hands around 100 Faces' waist, leaned her chin on his shoulder, and pressed her soft chest against his back. She whispered, "Master, what's going on?" She was obviously frightened by the strange phenomenon in the sky, and her eyes couldn't help but stare. 100 Faces said, "The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates are condensing the soul of the Golden Crow again." Junko was shocked. She understood the meaning of this sentence. She exclaimed, Then aren't we in danger? It said that when the 10 suns shine in the sky, the world will be turned into a sea of fire, and the people will be plunged into misery and suffering." 100 Faces nodded. Yes, the soul of the Golden Crow is indeed extraordinary. Then won't everything we have planned become meaningless? This world will not exist anymore. Junko asked. 100 Faces sneered. How can it be that easy? Do you think the others will just sit back and do nothing? I bet that Tang Jing must be rushing to Tianshan without stopping. Junko's expression turned cold when she heard this name. This name had caused her too much shock and confusion. Can he stop all of this? The corner of the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign's mouth hooked up into a playful smile, and said meaningfully, "Don't underestimate Tang Zhang's strength and determination. I watched him rise step by step, and my understanding of him also increased. He is soft-hearted and has great love for the people of the world. How could he watch as innocent people suffer such an undeserved calamity?" Junko curled her lips and said disapprovingly, "That's because he's a hypocrite. Is he deliberately acting like this? What great love. Is he that selfless?" The 100 Transformations Star-Lord smiled and declined to comment. "What should we do? Are we not going to do anything?" Junko paused for a moment and then asked worriedly, "What if we are not prepared at all and Tang Zheng is stopped from being one of the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor? What should we do then?" "Don't worry. Even if he doesn't succeed, there's still that guy, Chiyu, right? He was just tricked by Mo Sier and lost a great general like Saint King. How could he let this go?" The 100 Change Star Monarch explained. Junko still wanted to ask more questions, but 100 Faces Star-Lord turned around and hugged her. His body, which was more than 10 kilograms, was as light as a feather. Junko understood tacitly and immediately let out a soft cry. She hugged 100 Faces Star-Lord's neck. "Master, you're so bad. The 100 Faces Star-Lord chuckled. A great battle had begun. At the same time, Chiyu looked up at the sky and immediately locked onto the two suns hanging high in the sky. He gritted his teeth and said, "Emosia, you really want to resurrect the Yellow Emperor?" Wishful thinking. Although Emosia kept talking big and didn't put the Yellow Emperor in his eyes, he was still very afraid of the Yellow Emperor and didn't want him to be resurrected. After all, the Yellow Emperor had defeated him before. This was a battle of strength, an ironclad fact that he couldn't deny. If the Yellow Emperor was resurrected, he would definitely be a huge threat to him. Whoosh! Chiyu was like a ray of light as he soared into the sky and flew towards Sky Mountain. This time he didn't bring any of his subordinates and chose to travel alone. If he wanted to ruin Huang Emosia's plan, he alone was enough. In the new secret base of the Azure Dragon Palace, in front of a stone room, Granny Lee stood respectfully. "My lord, the soul of the Golden Crow has been reunited. A disaster is coming. If we don't act now, the world will cease to exist and the martial artists will never have a place to stand," Granny Lee said earnestly, almost tearing up. The stone room was very quiet and no one answered her. Bang! Granny Lee's legs went soft and she knelt on the ground. She raised her voice and shouted, "My lord, it'll be too late if we don't act now." If it was something else, Granny Lee could ignore it or deal with it herself. This time, it was the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor who had gathered the soul of the Golden Crow to resurrect the Yellow Emperor. She didn't have the power to stop it. Only the great Lord Ji Wuxiang had the power to do so. That was why she knelt in front of the stone room and begged the great lord in tears. The great lord had been in seclusion for a long time and didn't see anyone. No one knew his specific situation. Granny Lee would never disturb him unless it was a last resort. Just like the last earthquake in Dianan, she personally led people to deal with it. Although what she saw and heard later was far beyond her imagination, it didn't threaten the survival of the Azure Dragon Palace. Whoosh! A gust of wind rose from the ground and blew the leaves in front of the stone room. Granny Lee was startled and seemed to have sensed something. She raised her head and stared at the stone room, not knowing what had happened. A surge of energy enveloped her, causing her to panic. She hurriedly circulated her inner energy, attempting to block this surge of energy outside the door. However, all her efforts were in vain and didn't have any effect at all. She stood up slowly and couldn't kneel anymore. Her heart skipped a beat and her eyes flashed with ecstasy. She stared at the stone room with joy. Creak, creak. An awkward sound was heard. The stone room shook as if it was going to fall apart. Cracks appeared on the wall. Whoosh! A stone flew up from the wall. Then the other stones flew up and floated in the air as if they were alive. Granny Lee looked at the scene in shock. It seemed simple, but it was caused by an invisible force. She didn't have the strength to do it. All of this is the Great Lord's doing. Could it be that he has passed the obstacle? How strong is he? No one answered her question. When the last stone, the huge stone door, flew up, the Great Lord's figure was finally revealed. He stood in the middle of the rocks, and the rocks surrounded him like a responsible bodyguard. The Great Lord raised his foot and walked forward. The stones followed his footsteps and moved forward. This scene was extremely shocking to ordinary warriors because they couldn't do it. Granny Lee was not a weak-kneed person, but when she saw this scene, it was as if she had seen a god. She had an impulse to bow down. "My lord," she shouted in a daze. The Great Lord's eyes were deep as if there was endless magic. After locking onto Granny Lee, she had an illusion that she was deeply trapped. "Thank you for your hard work." Granny Lee's tears gushed out of her eyes. She felt that it was worth it to hear him say that it was hard. She was the only one who knew the bitterness of it all. Without the Great Lord, it was impossible for her to support the huge Azure Dragon Hall. If she didn't have a certain dignity before, it would be impossible for her to do it. From now on, the era of warriors has arrived. The Great Lord's voice was very magnetic. It even had a kind of bewitching magic. Granny Lee was intoxicated by his voice and muttered to herself, "The era of warriors? Yes, it belongs to us warriors. What kind of world is it?" Granny Lee was at a loss. She didn't know what to do. The Great Lord smiled and looked up at the sky. He looked at the two suns indifferently and said, "Feel it yourself." As soon as his voice fell, Granny Lee didn't have any specific feeling. The stars in the sky twinkled. However, the light of the stars was completely covered by the sunlight of the two suns. If it was still a dark night, the light of thousands of stars twinkling at the same time would also illuminate the earth. That scene would certainly be very shocking. Whoosh! The power of the stars fell from the sky and fell on Granny Lee. She was startled and looked at the sky in disbelief. Then she looked at the indifferent Great Lord. This. She stuttered for a long time but couldn't say a complete sentence. This was because this scene was simply too shocking. Her body was being rapidly transformed by the power of the stars, and the results were remarkable. Her cultivation soared like a rocket. She was the one involved, so she naturally felt it the most deeply. In addition, she had cultivated for most of her life, but she had never felt such surging power and rapid cultivation speed. Her worldview was almost turned upside down. Feel it quietly. This is the era of martial artists. The power of the stars is the noblest power in the world. What spiritual energy of heaven and earth? We martial artists disdain absorbing spiritual energy of heaven and earth because what belongs to us is the noblest power of the stars. Moreover, when we used the power of the stars in the past, outsiders would always find clues, especially Tang Zheng. Now, we don't have to worry about this problem. As long as it is under my control, the power of the stars is invisible. We don't have to worry about being discovered by outsiders. The Great Lord's provocative voice sounded in Granny Li's ears. In the past, the Great Lord had said similar words, but not as arrogant as this time. Moreover, he had helped other warriors to absorb the power of the stars. Granny Li had also felt it before, but it was completely different from this time. This was a qualitative leap. If every warrior's cultivation speed was so fast, then what was there to be afraid of? Immediately, Granny Li's confidence increased, and she was in high spirits. When the power of the stars in her body gradually calmed down, she excitedly said incoherently, "From now on, it's our era? No, it's your era, Great Lord." A smug expression appeared on the High Lord's face. Although he appeared to be indifferent, in the depths of his heart, what he had done had already surpassed the ancients. What new era? He had only banished all the cultivators in the world to the sky beyond heaven, but he had not fundamentally changed the race of warriors. However, the Great Lord had done it. He would completely change the warriors. Not only their living conditions, but he would also reshape the cultivation system of warriors. This was an unprecedented masterpiece. Any genius would not be worth mentioning in front of the Great Lord. Chapter 1336. Granny Li gradually calmed down from her shock. Looking at the third sun in the sky, her attention was attracted again. She asked, "My lord, it's already 3 suns. What should we do?" At this moment she had absolute confidence that the Lord could defeat the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates and stop this disaster. The Lord remained calm and said lightly, "This world will belong to the martial artists. If others can't survive this disaster, then it's their fate." Granny Li's heart skipped a beat. She immediately understood the meaning of the Lord's words. He was going to stand by and do nothing. Sure enough, the Lord continued, "This is a sin committed by the cultivators. It can let others know more about the cruelty of the cultivators. It's good for us. Why should we stop it?" But Granny Li wanted to refute, but she swallowed her words. She had never been soft-hearted. Her mind flashed and she understood the Lord's intention. He wanted to let the world know about the evil of the cultivators through this incident. Then they would hate the cultivators and naturally fall into the arms of the martial artists. Although the Lord was confident in his own strength, he was still a modern man. He understood the importance of the general public. He would not be like the ancient kings who ignored the general public. Instead, he would follow the will of the people and use it to his advantage. This was his wisdom. "My lord, this time, someone will definitely stop the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Will they succeed?" At this time, Granny Li was a little worried that the soul of the Golden Crow could not be fully condensed and the world would see the sins of the cultivators. If that happened, the Lord's plan would be disrupted. As for the life and death of ordinary people, Granny Li did not care at all. Hearing this, the Lord did not care at all. He said, "Whether it succeeds or not, when the people see the suns hanging above their heads again, the fear and uneasiness in their hearts will be aroused again. This time it will be completely aroused. They will not sit still and wait for death. For their lives, these people will do anything. The cultivators will definitely become the target of scorn, hated by everyone." Granny Li felt as if she was suddenly enlightened. She kept praising the High Lord's foresight and wisdom. In the sky, a white cloud swept across the horizon. Tang Jing, Li Xiaotian, and the Empyrean fairy stood on the somersault cloud. Before leaving, Tang Jing suddenly remembered that Li Xiaotian was not part of this trip. After all, the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows already belonged to her. Moreover, she had also cultivated Hoi's archery, which was a trump card against the soul of the Golden Crow. The three of them gazed into the distance in the direction of Heavenly Mountain. From time to time he would look up at the sky. There were already 3 suns. The number was increasing so quickly that it made people speechless. It also gave people a deep sense of unease. A scorching heat wave rolled down from the sky and covered their bodies. Fortunately, they were not ordinary people. Circulating their martial arts, they were able to withstand the heat wave. However, the others were not so lucky. In the streets and alleys, the ordinary people were already drenched in sweat. Their moisture was quickly evaporating, and they looked like they were about to turn into human jerky. Many people directly jumped into the water, but the water was also steaming and quickly evaporated. Flames rose into the air from many places and alarms rang out everywhere. Everyone felt a sense of despair, as if the god of death had descended. But at the same time, there was a strong anger in their hearts. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Cultivators, this is the evil of cultivators. They want to destroy humanity. Cultivators are the public enemy of humanity. Similar thoughts appeared in many people's minds, accompanied by anger that burned fiercely. In view of the previous few grand and earth-shattering events, cultivators were no longer an absolute secret group. Although the authorities had sealed off the real news and issued various seemingly scientific explanations, the ordinary people did not completely calm the panic in their hearts. They had also heard about the cultivators from various sources and rumors on the streets. It turned out that there was such a huge group of people hidden in the crowd. At that time, people did not have a direct impression of the likes and dislikes of the cultivators, nor did they have an absolute standpoint of benefits. But this time was different. The cultivators had caused all kinds of big events again and again, threatening the survival of the human race. Even a clay figurine had some anger. Moreover, this was a matter of life and death. They had no reason to retreat, and the hatred in their hearts for the cultivators grew day by day. Kill the cultivators, we are not willing to be sacrificial lambs. Yes, kill the cultivators. This group of bastards, even if we die, we will drag one of them down with us. Anger was contagious. It was as if there was an invisible hand controlling everything, causing the anger to become more and more intense. I heard that there are cultivators in a place. A very large area is occupied by these cultivators. Let's go find them and take revenge. Kill one and earn one. Yes, kill the cultivators. The crowd moved. The crowd was excited and crazily rushed towards a place. The heat wave caused the air they exhaled to be hot, as if it could ignite. Not long after, the crowd arrived at Tang Zheng's villa. This villa had been completely bought by him. Only his core members lived here, and almost all of them were cultivators. When the patrolling witches saw this group of excited people, they were shocked. Their attention was completely attracted by the soul of the golden crow in the sky. They did not expect that there would be people attacking the villa. Moreover, this group of people were clearly ordinary people. They were not martial artists, nor were they cultivators. They were a group of motley crew. 3 cobblers were better than Zhuge Liang, even if the other party's strength could not be compared to theirs. But after all, there were many of them. Their will was like a fortress. After twisting into a rope, the power that erupted was still not to be underestimated. The villa was protected by a large formation. The crowd could not break through it all. Although it was empty in front of them and there were no obstacles, the crowd was still blocked by an invisible wall. Bang bang bang. These people punched the protective barrier again and again, only to hear the sound of the air being torn apart. These people were rebounded by the huge force and were sent flying backwards. They could not break through the protective barrier at all. Instead, they were sent flying. However, this did not scare them away. Instead, it made them even more ferocious. They clamored to break through the protective barrier. Seeing this, the witches were helpless. They loudly advised them not to waste their energy and to leave this place quickly. Another sun appeared in the sky. 4 suns hung high in the sky, making the crowd even angrier. The people who were originally watching changed their attitude. Like the most ferocious beasts, they hysterically attacked the protective barrier. They did not listen to the witch's advice. They thought that the other party was afraid of them and deliberately gave in. Therefore, more and more people gathered outside the villa. Tian Chanzi and the others were at the entrance of the villa. They sized up this group of people without leaving a trace. The crowd was too far away so they could not see their faces clearly. However, they could clearly feel the intensity of their anger. It was as if they could burn everything in the world. They looked at each other and discussed countermeasures. Boom. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.